All right, well, if YouTube is to be believed, we are streaming, which is awesome. Give me 1 second to figure out getting the chat working. Wrong keyboard, which I will explain in a second. Well, eventually I will figure out the... Oh, I think I got it. Let me figure out the keyboard real quick. You can tell I'm a real professional. Well, shucks. I can't seem to get that working. Let me give the live chat one more try. Thank you for your patience. Hold on. And it's not the software I'm using. I'm just using free stuff from Social Stream Ninja. It is completely my own inexperience. And it was working before in a test. Uh-oh. Thank you, Alex, for confirming. I just wish the chat overlay were working. It was working before. It's very frustrating that it's not. Gone to bed. What time zone is it by you, K-Panic? Arzika, nice to see you. Should be much better latency on this stream since the last time I tried. Unfortunately, I'm hearing myself double, so I'm also going to try to fix that right now. Let's hope I don't kill my own audio. All right, so it looks like... Okay, it looks like I'm still broadcasting. I'm going to try one more time to get this chat overlay working, because it's really nice to see it on screen, and I had it working before, so let's try it one last time. Almost ready. Wrong keyboard again. There we go. That's what I want. All right. I would consider the chat ready to go. So, as the description hopefully says, recently passed 14 kilobyte subscribers, which is 14336 subscribers. And Arugas, how you doing? See, now with the chat, with everything working, I can actually see what I'm doing. I can see everything, including you guys, which is great. And I should be able to respond in less than a minute and 45 seconds, which is what the terrible delay was in the last stream. Just two things happened. We passed 14K subscribers, which is nice, especially for something that I kind of do on the side. Believe me, if I won the lottery, I would do it full time because I love this stuff. But I have a family to support, so I do have a day job. And the other thing that happened was that OBS released, I think it's 27.1, and which now supports AV1 encoding. Despite my love of all things vintage computing, I really, really love the bleeding edge of certain aspects of tech, like video encoding, sound compression, audio compression, stuff like that. And I have an RTX 4090. I splurged. I guess I should apologize for that. And it has AV1 encoding and hardware. And so I thought, let's give it a try. So this is a 4K 30 frame per second stream, 30p stream. And we are trying to restrict our bandwidth to 6 megabits. And so far, I think it looks fine. I'm actually going to peek over into the live chat, into the live stream real quick. And, I mean, it looks nice to me. In fact, it's even broadcasting live up to 1440p, and then the replay will be in 4K. So that's really cool. So it is nice now and then to be on the bleeding edge of stuff. So Pirate Gamer Boy, hello. Starlight is making beep boops. That's you can never have enough beep boops. Speaking of beep boops, this should be working. I hear it. I don't know if you hear the beeping, but this is, in fact, as the little post-it note shows on the bottom, this is not emulator output. This is, in fact, a real system. In fact, it's one of the systems that we wrote and tested Area 5150 on, and, for that matter, 88 miles per hour on, if you know me from my demo scene endeavors. Glad to see that the beep is working. So, as the text file shows on the screen, this is a totally random stream. We're going to run it to see how long it goes. Probably 2 hours, roughly, I would think. And you can ask me anything, and I will try to generate random trivia, truthful random trivia, to keep you all entertained if I have that knowledge. It's interesting, again, because the channel is called the Old School PC. Everyone thinks that that's it and that I live in the past. But I got to be honest, I've been having a lot of fun running Stable Diffusion, picture generation models on my local PC, which is the kind of we live in the future moment that you always dream you would have as a kid. That's another crazy thing. As a teenager, I loved cyberpunk. I saw the birth of cyberpunk. I was like 14 when Neuromancer came out. 16 when Akira came out. Blade Runner, the whole thing. And it's like, and now we have a game. We have Cyberpunk 2077, which like perfectly realizes that vision, which is amazing. We have hardware that can run it with real-time ray tracing, which is also amazing. We live in the future. Or to paraphrase Louis C.K., everything's amazing and no one is happy. But I guess that's everything. Pirate Boy, so let me get caught up a little bit here. You noticed there was a copy of Grave of the Fireflies on your FTP. Yes. That was a request for someone, and I fulfilled that request via my FTP server. If I get a request to remove it, I will. Maybe I'll go remove it now that you mentioned. But Grave of the Fireflies is one of the only Studio Ghibli films that is somewhat difficult to get your hands on because it deals with a fairly sensitive subject. It is a representation of two children living in the time of the Holocaust. And so I don't know how available it is. But it's not quite as available as you would think, at least here in the continental United States. So I obtained it and made it available for a friend. And reading further, Pirate Gamer Boy says you did like it, even though you never actually cried once. Well, that's okay. You don't have to cry when you watch a sad film. There's I mean, different films mean different things to different people. I used to have opinions on which films were like good or bad. I don't anymore because everybody's experience, background, and sensibilities are different. I have a love of, I'm not going to call them bad movies, I'll call them cheesy movies. I have a love of movies that are not made very well, but you could tell they were trying. So I suppose, like Mystery Science Theater 3000, I can appreciate a bad movie here and there. Not bad, but they missed their mark. So nothing in the chat, so I am going to start randomly playing games and see what happens. One of my this isn't the first game I've ever played. Let's navigate a little bit better. A lot of people use Xtree. I have from the very beginning I loved using this file browser called PC Valet, which was shareware in '89 by John Junned, who was also. So I see you, Arzika, and the chat. I have to adjust the chat window because it's burning into my. It's almost ready to burn into my brain. Let me see if I can adjust this. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Oh, is there a way I can see? You can tell I'm like a super novice. Oh, come on. It would help if I used the right keyboard to adjust this. There we go. Nope, that's not what I want either. All right, sorry, one sec. Let's see if that fixes it. Arg. Almost. There we go. I'll take it. Have I ever seen Raw Force? Give me a second to remind myself on what Raw Force actually is. 1982. Action horror. Kung Fu Cannibals. Oh, yeah, the Filipino-American one. I have actually seen Raw Force. Not a big fan. It is indeed funny. Currently, my latest bad movie laughing fit was Rhapsody Street Kids, the Christmas film. And I didn't realize that Vox or some other place had done a behind the scenes on, like they had written an article on how the Rhapsody Street Kids film was made. And they thought that they could produce a feature-length film using consumer software that lets you move 3D objects around, but you can't model them. You can't create your own animations. It is exactly as terrible as you think it would be. The software was written in 1995 to run on Windows systems, and that's how they're going to make a film. It has to be seen to be believed. And it was broadcast on actual live television, which is really crazy. Pirate Gamer Boy, I'd like to get an actual PC or XT sometime. Somehow I'd prefer to have an XT. You know what? The XT is what I recommend people get. A lot of people like the iconic, it's the first PC, the IBM PC, 1981. I want the Rev A version. I want the 1981 BIOS. I want the 16 to 64K motherboard. You know what? A PC XT is so much more useful. It has 8 slots instead of 5. That's it. That's the number one reason. It has 8 slots instead of 5. If you're lucky, you might get one with an integrated MFM hard drive or something. Although, if you don't get one with a hard drive, I wouldn't worry about it too much because a lot of people, for convenience, are replacing them with XT IDE systems and flash drives, compact flash drives, or SD cards, or something like that. And it's a lot more convenient to load software, or if you're developing on an old system, like I do sometimes, offload software using the SD card. Back to old computers. There was some chatter on the PC Junior forum a while back about rewriting the PC Junior BIOS. What do you think could be done by such an endeavor? The wording, what do you think could be done? I'm not sure if you're asking, what's the point, or what do you think is capable? I'll try to answer both. There's a couple of things you could probably do with regards to compatibility, maybe, if you tried to rewrite parts of the PC Junior BIOS. However, it's packed pretty tight. There's not a lot of extra room in there. Not only that, you run the risk of possibly messing up some retail games that used cartridge ROM basic, because some of the some games, some basic programs would like peak, or call routines like at known locations. So if you shuffle stuff around in the ROM, it's usually not a good idea. The scroll has jumped off, so I now have to refer to my YouTube scroll, which is awesome. I don't know. The more practical use of trying to rewrite parts of the PC Junior BIOS would be some sort of BIOS extension or overlay for use with a Junior IDE rev model. Alan Hightower, I think, for a while wanted to add real-time clock routines, like support that part of the BIOS, like the AT BIOS has, these real-time clock routines functions, API. And so that way you could set your date in DOS, and then every time you reboot, it'll load it out of that. And the Junior IDE has a real-time clock. So that's the kind of stuff I see making more sense. Or updating the XT IDE code to support, go from CHS, which is what I think it is now, to LBA. I could be wrong about that, but I think that's more of it. Some people seem to think you can fix the compatibility through the BIOS. You can't. The PC Junior was deliberately cost cut, and the parts of it that are incompatible are directly due to the hardware design. If you wonder why you can't hit a key while you're reading a floppy drive or something, that's because there is no keyboard controller. The CPU's doing it. If you wonder why there's no background floppy stuff, like you can't format a floppy in the background, that's because there's no floppy controller. The CPU's doing it, and so on and so on. So, unfortunately, BIOS patches can't really address that. Let's see. Catching up on the chat, Pirate Gamer Boy says, oldest PC compatible I have is a 286 that barely works. Well, if you need help trying to diagnose or repair it, of course, I always refer people to the fine folks at the Vintage Computer Federation Forums, or VCF. If you just search for VCF Forum, you should find it. There's vintage computing enthusiasts from all walks of life there, but they have a very large, I would say, I can't tell if they're the second largest or the largest, but they're one of those two largest communities for diagnosing and repairing vintage systems. The other community that I was fighting with in my head was Vogons, which originally was about... as the name implies, the acronym for Vogons is Very Old Games on New Systems. And when it first started in the late 90s, I think, or early 2000s, it was mostly about emulation or emulation layers, like thunking 16-bit programs to run on under 32-bit Windows 2000 or something along those lines. But they have forums now for hardware, and they have a very, very, very active, huge cache of people that deal with like sound cards and stuff, because sound was obviously a very important part of DOS gaming. So let's catch up with the chat a bit. 50 Shades of Beige. What are we working on? Well, I was about to start gaming because we were running out of things to talk about. However, then a lot of people started talking about stuff. I am going to go ahead and prime for playing a game. Actually, I need to load an ANSI driver because, and I'll talk about what this game is and why it's special to me in a second, as soon as we run out of chat stuff to talk about. Imagine a movie made entirely in Poser. Yeah, that's Rhapsody Street Kids, like Christmas. I can't remember the name of it. I should probably get to the actual name. Let's see. The actual name of it is Rhapsody Street Kids Believe in Santa. Or something. Believe in something. K-Panic, but the whirring and rattling hard drive is part of the experience. Yes, which is why I have real systems with real hardware and real drives and real noises and real delays and real error read retries. But I also have systems that use all flash. And I also use emulators. I don't think you can rely on any one specific thing to enjoy this hobby. There are a lot of people, oh, and by the way, if this stream goes out of sync, which it shouldn't, I tried real hard, but if this stream goes out of sync like last time, let me know. I think there's something I can do to like punch it in the face and get it back to normal. But it looks like it's okay right now. At least OBS is showing me it's okay. So, vintage stuff. I actually... you remember Hacker Public Radio? Does anyone remember Hacker Public Radio? It might still be going. It was a free, free network, free, Libre podcast network and show, and anyone could submit a podcast episode, and I did, like back in 2010, where I actually talk about this. I explored the fact that I think you need both emulation and real hardware to further the hobby and further the history. Emulators have strengths and weaknesses. Even FPGA emulators, and they are hardware emulators, have weaknesses. Not a lot, but they do have some. And the biggest weakness all emulators have is that if you have hardware that hasn't been emulated yet, you're out of luck. I think it's up to vintage computer enthusiasts to maintain the hardware so that emulator authors have something to base their results off of. Honestly, when we wrote 88 miles per hour, if you remember the last line of that, it was, this is only the beginning of what we can do, which is a huge flex, but it was true. What can you do? And we were really hoping that other people would probe the PC and that it would flesh out. We broke every emulator with that demo on purpose because we wanted emulator authors to step up their game. Unfortunately, I guess there's not enough people who care about emulating the original PC that nobody did. So you may be happy to know that we did. One of our group members came up with an 8088 Cycle Exact emulator, and it is in PCE, I think, and it should be included in other stuff pretty soon. We're still working on it. My goodness, is that a random Clint jumping in? That's fantastic. It's great to see you, sir. I am going to very quickly jump down to you because you are a VIP, and then I will go back up and explain some other stuff in the chat. I've been putting the Gold Lib and Orpheus 2 through their paces. We're talking about emulation, talking about emulated sound cards. I think it's great that those have been cloned. I think, as you yourself found out, the AdLib Gold was not without its shortcomings. But if you know of those shortcomings and you can work around them, it's actually a really nice sounding card. I don't know about the Gold Lib, but the actual AdLib 1000, the actual AdLib Gold, is an extremely quiet card. There's almost no noise. So it has advantages, but let's see. Speaking of Vogon sound card stuff, have you done much with the modern retro card scene? I have not. Other than lending cards out to people, not just yourself, but other people who want a card for reference, I have not. I have also lent out other boards for people, like Tube Time last year cloned a Quadram Apple II board, which is a board that it's the Quad Link, which would let you run Apple II programs in a PC. Subject of a future video, I promise. And he reverse engineered the board, cloned it, sent it back to me. And this year, I swear I'm going to do the Mindscape music board, the Bank Street Music Writer card, aka the PC version of the Mocking board, which was created but never came out and really was only in one retail package. So I haven't worked too much with clone cards. It's hard enough trying to collect real vintage cards. I don't know if that answered your question, but if not, please ask for some follow-ups. And I think you have another one down here. One of the most active things in vintage computing lately. Yes, it absolutely is. I stay abreast of them. one of the ones I was really the most excited about, unfortunately got put on the sidelines by COVID. Alan Hightower is an incredibly talented hardware engineer, and he was making an FPGA sound card, an ISA sound card. This was, I want to say, 3 years ago. So this is COVID, right? So 2020. So over 3 years ago, he was working on a sound card, and he gave a presentation at VCF, I want to say 2019, about this. He was working on a sound card that emulated everything. It literally. There's, I think it's the, I don't remember. I forget the name of the Gravis Ultrasound homebrew that someone is very talented is working on right now. They can only load one core at a time. Alan's card could load all of them. So you could have a single card that, plugged into a system, would be both a Sound Blaster 16 at port 220, IRQ5, DMA1, and DMA3, and a Gravis Ultrasound at port 240, IRQ7, DMA7, and a real hardware ad lib. Well, that does Sound Blaster 16, so same thing, right? And a CMS at a different port, and a general MIDI card at 330, or let's be compatible. Let's say 300, and an MT32 at port 320, which I guess is more, or port 330, which is I think more typical. It was the bomb, and he had the Gravis Ultrasound working perfectly, and then COVID hit, and then he had to divert his attention elsewhere to earn a living and to do other stuff. So unfortunately, I'm not totally sure we'll see the sound card to end all sound cards ever come out, but it's awfully hilarious to think about. Anyhow, so that's as far as I go. So wonderful to see you, sir. Thank you for popping in. I know you're busy. I hope to see you a little bit later at Vintage Computer Festival Midwest in September. And I myself will be at Vintage Computer Festival Southwest in June, which I have not. I have only ever been to Vintage Computer Festival Midwest. First, I attended it as a patron. Then I started volunteering, and now I'm one of the 3 showrunners. So it'll be nice to go to a different show and relax and actually be a patron again. I'm going to catch back up on the chat because this is a Q&A stream. Thanks, everyone, for being patient with my random ramblings. Let's see. Where were we at? John Donnelly says, I'm watching something else. I'll join you at the top of the hour. Okay, fine. I guess we'll see you in 8 minutes. Let's see. 50 Shades of Bades. I run a hard disk drive just for the nostalgic sound. I agree. A Seagate ST225 is probably the classic PC hard drive sound. It is also, unfortunately, one of the default sounds that anyone goes to whenever they have to do any hard drive sound. I remember watching a CSI episode in the mid-2000s, and they had to do some fancy computer stuff, and all of a sudden I hear like Mac floppy drive noises and Seagate ST225 MFM noises, and I'm like, come on, really? It's 2000. You're not running that hardware. Anyway, it was all kind of silly. It was of the vein of enhance, which even with AI is still impossible. You can't create detail if it isn't there. So, John Donnelly says, stream still in sync. Well, gosh, I hope so. It looks like it's in sync here. If it isn't, somebody please let me know. Arzika, what is the most unique computer you've ever seen in person? Unique. Unique is a bit of a vague word, so I'm going to guess at what you meant. I love the terminals that are store and forward. I don't think that's the right term, but I think they're from HP and maybe some other companies, these graphical terminals where the phosphor was persistent. Richard is going to kill me for forgetting his last name, gave a talk either at last year's VCF or the one right before that, where he went over all these crazy graphical terminals. And one of them, the phosphor on the CRT itself is a form of memory. And if you draw on it, you draw on it and then you do nothing else, and the image just stays there. You could almost use it for RAM. I mean, not really, but you draw and it would stay there until you either manually erased it through some electric process or pulled the plug. I think those are super cool. In terms of PCs, the most unique PC I've ever seen was a non-working at the time, unfortunately, Mindset. I think the Mindset is amazing. There are two popular-ish large videos on the Mindset. One is from David Murray, the 8-bit guy, where he shows it off and does a general overview. And then there's an extreme deep dive of the Mindset by Tech Time Traveler, who in a very short time has created a nice large cache of wonderful videos. And I highly suggest you subscribe to the both of them, but especially Tech Time Traveler, because he puts a lot of heart and soul into his videos. And he did a great thing in the Mindset. The Mindset is like this the Mindset is best described as a PC with Amiga guts. It's got Sony guts. Yeah. That's what it is. It's a PC with Amiga guts. It's a PC, so it's an 8088 running at either 4.77 megahertz, or I want to say 3 point something megahertz, but it has a coprocessor for blitting graphics and graphics primitives, and it has like 6 voice wavetable audio. I think it's 6 voices, and there's a demo that came with the Mindset, and it's like the video game. It plays almost like the video game. What was the one that came? It was Stargate, and then Defender, and then wrong keyboard, Jim. There was a 3D arcade game by Eugene Jarvis and his partner. I'm trying to look it up right now. What was it? Someone probably knows. This is gonna kill me. Blaster. Yes, thank you, Pirate Boy. It is that. It's Blaster. It plays just like Blaster. And you're like, this is a PC, like in 83 or 84. Unfortunately, it's also massively crippled. I think it was expandable up to 256K of RAM. That's not a good sign. And it was not PC compatible, but it did run MS-DOS. So it was MS-DOS compatible, the dreaded MS-DOS compatible line of systems. You can also add Kpro to that, and the Hyperion, I think. Is that right? The Hyperion? I forget. Anyway, it would be wonderful to do a whole video on MS-DOS compatible 8088 systems. That would be kind of cool. Hope I answered your question. If not, feel free to ask it again. Catching up in the chat, as this is a Q&A stream. Pirate Gamer Boy talking about his 286. Basically, the issue is that it's extremely unstable and programs crash at random. That is usually the result of 2 things. Bad RAM, so test your RAM, where you might have a weak bit or a flaky bit, and you might think, it's just 1 bit. Hey, 1 bit will take it down. Or, if it's random and the memory tests out okay, you probably have some cold solder joints on the motherboard. Cold solder joints are when the solder it's not a good mix of tin and lead and whatever it is that it's made of. And or it was soldered at the wrong temperature, or it was done so without, I don't know if flux quality really counts, but the point is, after time, solder joints get weak and they crack, and then these are called cold solder joints. And you can fix them quickly by reflowing the solder. You don't even have to, the proper thing is to get the old solder out and put new ones in, but you can reflow the solder just by getting it hot, letting it melt, and then letting it cool again. And so as you use the computer, it gets warm, and as it gets warm, it expands, and as it expands, those cold solder joints will disconnect their electrical connection. And it might not be something digital that is super easy to see, like RAM or video card or something like that. It might be something analog, which is, like a resistor or a capacitor, something that regulates voltage or current. And so the system freaks out in a weird way or an odd way, like an analog way. So try those things. See if that helps. Let's see here. Stars Manny. Hi, Jim. Oh, wait, actually, let me back up just a little bit. John Donnelly is complimenting me on the World of Tron 2.0 video from 2010. I used to think I was the first person who uploaded a 60p video to YouTube and had it play in 60p. Unfortunately, I found an example from 2009, so I'm not the first. But it was I was creating and uploading 60p video before YouTube officially supported it, and when they did add support in 2014 or 2015, retroactively all those videos now suddenly played in 60p. And one of them was the World of Tron 2.0, which was, up until Tron Legacy, was official canon sequel to Tron. And I still think it is. I mean, I think it's great. I think everyone should at least try playing Tron 2.0. The soundtrack is amazing. The composer won a gaming industry award for the soundtrack. It not only evokes, it not only integrates some of Wendy Carlos's leitmotifs from the original soundtrack, but it also comes up with its own wonderful pieces. And so just that alone, and also it's kind of cool to walk around in the world of Tron. And I thought the graphics were awesome, and that's why I made a video called The World of Tron 2.0. Stars Manny, hi Jim, you mentioned about formatting disks in the background. Was it the case that 286 could only support cooperative multitasking and 386 could support preemptive multitasking? Those two statements are true, but you didn't need a 286 or a 386 to format disks in the background. Chuck Guzis, Guzis, I hope I'm not butchering your name, Chuck. I'm sorry if I am. Who created software you might know like SimCGA, Teledisk, and Anadisk, also created a series of floppy disk formatting programs, and one of them is Memory Resident, and it will format a floppy in the background. It's a TSR. You hit a key, you stick it a floppy, you confirm, and then you go about your business while it formats. I think it's a neat trick. I also am not totally sure I think it's cool as a parlor trick, but I'm not totally sure how useful it is because it only takes 45 seconds to format a 5 1/4 inch disc. So, I mean, maybe, I don't know, high density ones are like a minute and a half. I can save what I'm doing, exit to DOS, format a disk, and go back in. It's not a big deal. But yes, you're absolutely right. The 286 could only support cooperative multitasking because it did not have any form of virtualization. The 386 does. The 386 also has official levels of protection, like, think Ring 0 in a kernel, that kind of thing. And most importantly, it has the V8086 mode, which allows you to set up a hardware access trapped environment with the 386, and you can run a 16-bit program in there, and you can create multiple of them. And all they are really, the V8086 mode of the 386 is really only two things. It's a virtual register set. So like every V8086 environment has its own set of registers. That's it. And trapping all hardware writes. And that's and then also a special register to know like which environment you're in, so that when it traps a hardware write, it knows where to send it or something. So you'd be surprised how little it takes to create a really useful processor. You need something to trap hardware writes and or manage memory, like a memory management unit, and then virtual registers. Because what is multitasking other than saving state and then going somewhere and restoring state? And when you do that at the lowest hardware level, it's you save all the registers and then you restore the data for the next program you're switching to, and you restore all the registers. And one of the reasons Sun Microsystems hardware in the late 2000s, like 2010 or something, Sun came out with this cool hardware that could multitask. It could create something like 128 threads or 256 threads, and the only magic it really had was that it had 128 different register sets in hardware. So to task switch to a new process, it would just be like, okay, now we're on set number 2, and suddenly all the registers change, and now we're set. So it's like rotating a rotary knob to go to the different hardware registers. Anyway, let's go back to vintage. Well, vintage. Let's go back to vintage PCs. All right, I am still catching up. Donald Rivers, I have my PC and I ran 88 megahertz demo on it. I'm assuming you mean 88 miles per hour. Thank you. It crashed towards the end because some of my memory is bad. It will also crash towards the end if you don't have enough memory. 88 miles per hour could have run in 256 or 384K. It requires 640 because of one effect, the raster bars. We wanted the raster bars to look really cool. And so we generated like 15 or 18 full seconds of non-repeating motion, non-repeating colors and oscillations. So that's why you need the full 640 for it. All right. Pirate Gamer Boy, the Mockingboard is pretty neat, stereo, AY, and all. Interestingly, the PC version of the Mockingboard, which would have come out if anyway, I'll do some history and make a video on it, but the PC version has 6 voices, but they are mono. I have yet to look at the board to see if they are mono because of how the board was built or because of the chip they used or whatever, but it's not stereo. Arugus01, I imagine running Apple II on PC is just as wonky as running DOS on a Mac. Yeah, it is, and I think it's hilarious, and that's why I want to make a video about it. There were multiple boards, by the way. It wasn't just the one. There were boards from at least 3 companies. I have all but one of them, so I'm happy to show those off. And it's just freaky, man. It's real freaky to boot an Apple II game, inserting the disk into your IBM PC floppy drive. And then you can also, most of the boards also supported like task switching. So you could like freeze the Apple II program, like go back to the PC and do stuff. It was really cool. Okay. Donald says, I don't have a CGA monitor, but it worked for the 88 miles per hour demo because it used composite. That was a great trick and we were super happy. But we intentionally did RGBI TTL monitors for the latest demo, Area 5150, because we felt it would be more compatible across the pond for people in PAL countries. We also thought it would be more compatible with emulators. We're really, our secondary goal of making these demos is to try to get emulator authors to step up their game. Donald wrote programs in C to play multi-channel music for the CMS chips, the Philips SAA 1099. I think those chips have potential. I think they take a really talented musician to make them sing, but you've got 12 voices, and they can be panned anywhere in the stereo field. I'm pretty sure that's right. You could probably do some pretty cool stuff with it. Clint says, and he's probably gone, but I'll catch up to his questions anyway. Considering VCF Southwest myself, I have no idea. I mean, if you're there, look me up. I'm going to resist the urge to help with the show. That sounds terrible, but I've got my own show to worry about. I really just want to go there and relax. Of course, air travel and hotel and trying to figure out transportation and meals is not exactly relaxing, but I would like to just sort of relax. VCF Southwest, right out of the gate, for being the very first show by this organizational team, is fairly impressive from the organizational standpoint. They have thought of a couple of cool things that I would not have thought of. They claim that they're going to have a FedEx station at the show so that if you buy something huge, you can ship it to yourself right there with FedEx. That's really cool. I don't know how they wrangled that. And just based on everything that they're putting together for VCF Southwest, you would think that right out of the gate they're going to have like 3,000 people there. I don't see how that's possible, but I am also hoping I am wrong. So hopefully I'll see you there. Retro Tech Chris, I know I'll see you there. Pirate Gamer Boy, doesn't Half-Life have some stock old hard drive sounds? It might. I also seem to recall maybe Portal does too. Let's see. Arugas01, I recently opened up my dad's old PS2 Model 30, expecting the hard drive in it to be the proprietary model, but instead it turned out to be an MFM drive with controller card. Common upgrade, honestly. I mean, the hard drive from IBM cost $1,000. The controller card and the MFM drive was probably even a higher capacity and cost $800. So, I mean, those aren't actual numbers. I'm paraphrasing. It's just, IBM stuff was expensive. So if you bought it thinking, I don't need a hard drive, and then 6 months later, you're like, boy, I really need a hard drive. I mean, it was common to do that. Very common. The first PC my family ever owned was a 2 floppy drive model. And for 5 years, I got really good at running programs with 2 floppy drives only. And then finally, in the 5th year, I caved and got a plus hard card, 20 megabyte. Soda break. Oh, sorry, I'm in the Midwest. I have to call it pop. Pop break. K-Panic, like the Tektronix 4010, I believe so. Although I could have sworn HP also made one of these kinds of graphical terminals with memory, but I could be wrong. Nice, Pirate Gamer Boy. Nice to see the mindset is emulated in MAME. That is cool. RetroTech Chris, thank you for correcting me. The mindset is an 8186 CPU. Let us see. Someone said that the chat is stalled. I don't think it's stalled because someone just commented on my pop comment. You want to hear a funny story about calling it pop? It's vintage computer related. Trust me. Back when I was still with Moby Games, we were at Classic Gaming Expo 2004, 2005. We were at 2 of them, and in the last one we were there, we were trying to drum up support for Moby Games. We realized back then that what we had created inadvertently was a community-supported gaming database, which, in order to survive, needed the support of the community. So we were there, and people were like, why are you promoting Moby Games? Well, just because we wanted more people to know about it, and the more people that know about it might contribute some game info. And the more people that contribute game info, the more useful the site is for everybody. It's the Wikipedia model, except we existed before Wikipedia. That's how old Moby Games is. And unfortunately, that's how old I am. So we were at Classic Gaming Expo. We set up a booth, and we were running a little trivia game. And if you participated, you could get a can of soda. And if you won the trivia game, we'd give you a free T-shirt. And this is California. So I do call it pop. When I'm speaking informally and just as myself, I guess that's what I'm doing now. I call it pop because I'm mostly from the Midwest. I spent most of my time in Illinois with a 6-year stint in New Jersey. And I've always called it pop. So I remember running the trivia game at Classic Gaming Expo, and this guy in I think a Raiden costume walked by, and he was sort of interested in what was going on the projector. I'm like, hey, you want to play a trivia game? And he kind of looked at me like, oh, I'm not so sure. And I'm like, well, hey, you get a free pop just for trying. And he turned, and he stopped, and he turned, and he looked at me, and he goes, it's soda. I was like, geez, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was breaking some Southern California rule here. I'm just a hick from the Midwest. Let's go back to catching up on the chat. And the video chat updated severely late. Hey, if I'm no longer in sync, please let me know. And I think I know why the chat is taking a while to update on screen. It's because I'm scrolling through it. So I'm going to try to get super fast now. Is there any interesting demo potential with a PS2 with MCGA graphics? The YouTube channel PC Retro Tech explored that. They were able to coax kind of a chunky full screen scrolling kind of thing out of a real MCGA card, which is kind of neat. It's really hard to tweak that card, though. I think it would be easier and cooler to have a demo on an MCGA specific system, a PS2 model 25 or 30, or Epson. There was an Epson system that had MCGA. If you actually just wrote a demo for the 640 by 480 black and white mode, 2-color mode, I think that would be cool. Pirate Gamer Boy, I think Monkey Island and Thexter Firehawk sound very, very nice in the CMS. They do. I'm trying to think if there's anything that sounds better on the CMS. I can't think of a game that sounds better, but the demo software that came with it has some really nice tunes. I remember the CMS was marketed as the Creative Music System. So, all right. RetroTech Chris confirmed the UPS store will be at VCF Southwest, and so will he. So if you like UPS or if you like RetroTech Chris, you can see them at Vintage Computer Festival Southwest. I haven't watched it, Pirate Gamer Boy. I haven't watched any VCF stuff. I'm curious, do they have any Japanese computers like X68K, PC98, FM Towns, etc.? At VCF Midwest, I definitely saw last year an X68K running games that you could walk up and play. I don't recall seeing a PC98. At previous shows, I recall seeing an FM Towns and coveting it. The 486 FM Towns, that is probably a system I would try to collect if I could do so without selling a kidney to earn the money. All right. Chat messages in the stream, are they coming? It looks like they're back to normal. Pop like God intended. Yeah, goddamn right. K-Panic23, I still have a 20 megabyte plus hard card in one of my 5150s, and it actually still works. Well, you're super lucky that that still works, because all of the rubber in there, including the backstop for the heads, has turned to gunk. So at some point, you are going to have stiction problems. One of my very first vintage computer tech videos on YouTube, I want to say 2008, 2009, I take the cover off of a plus hard card 20 megabyte and I show like what is stiction, and I use a Q-tip to like pop the head off the platter and spin it back up. So the 20s and the 40s somehow usually still work. All other plus hard cards are dead. They're dead as a doornail. The EPROMs like fade and they become empty. I think people have resurrected them by burning new EPROMs, but that's cold comfort if you don't have the image for the specific model that you have. Pirate Gamer Boy, something I'd like is for someone to take the guts of an IntelliVoice and put it on an ISA card. Funny you should mention that. The IntelliVoice was just nothing more than a Texas Instruments speech chip fed with, and it's not, that chip isn't really speech synthesis in the traditional sense. You know, think, speak, and spell. It actually is just something that replays heavily compressed voice signals. The voice is analyzed and turned into excitation of vowel sounds like pitches, and then also white noise sounds like the S in speech and stuff like that. So the IntelliVoice is just that. And then, so I'm talking about putting on a card. So the IntelliVoice was a Texas Instruments speech chip. That speech chip was in the PC Junior cluster, speech sidecar. Later, they came out with that functionality on an ISA card for IBM PS2, I think, EduQuest systems. So you can get the IntelliVoice on an ISA card. Isn't that fun? Okay, if you can read this. Pike Caruso 97. If you can read this, have you tried the GCC IA16 compiler on Linux? I have not. The GCC IA16 compiler, I believe, if it's the same compiler I'm thinking of, was created in part or maybe in full by Andrew Jenner, one of my demo cohorts. And if you find him If you find his blog, he goes by Reinigni, which is engineer spelled backwards. Feel free to ask him a question. He can probably help you with that. It seems the chat will stall every now and then for a few minutes and then update. I think that's because I was holding on to the scroll bar in the chat. Sorry, I have let go. Right now it seems to be working. CP Rosu, hard cards were always out of my price range. Last time I saw a working one for sale at a computer shop was like $19.95. Raffle. Ended up with an ST251. Well, you know what? The ST251, those things are tanks. I personally have never run across one that has failed. I know other people have, but I've got like 5 of them still, and they all still work. Arugas, I'm also from the Chicagoland area. Still get those odd glances from the soda areas of the community. Let's see. Pi Caruso, it seems to me that short chat messages, again, like I said, I screwed up. I was holding on to the scroll bar, so here, I'll test the chat right now. Wrong keyboard. Yes. All right. I will not touch the chat anymore, and it should work. Actually, talking about the Raiden corrected me on the Sodapop thing. There's a Moby Games retrospective Classic Gaming Expo video out there somewhere. It might be on archive.org. Might be on YouTube. And you can see the Raiden guy. He's in the video. The Raiden guy who thought it was soda. Let's see. Pi Caruso 97. Have you tried Return to Monkey Island, a modern sequel by the original creators? I have not. I have gotten through shockingly little adventure games in my entire gaming hobby, career, whatever you want to call it. It's not a career. I don't get paid for it. I have gone through some LucasArts games all the way through, so I'm not a complete Luddite. I have finished Full Throttle. I have finished Sam & Max Hit the Road. Unfortunately, that's all I can remember finishing. So no, I haven't actually played any Monkey Island games through to completion. So if I have to give up my nerd card for that, I apologize. I'm glad they're making... I'm glad there's a renaissance for this kind of stuff. Didn't the Space Quest guys try to come out with something, and didn't the Corys try to come out with a what was that game? The Sierra Quest of the Longbow, I think that was, like, that series. I think it's great. I'll tell you what, actually, I have played a modern sequel, remake, whatever. The Access guys, about, 6 years ago, had a Kickstarter for the Tesla Effect, which was a conclusion to the Tex Murphy saga. And they shot all new 4K video for it. And the environments are true 3D instead of like quasi 3D with textures. And I loved it. For a Kickstarter project, by a scrappy band of like 10 people, but whoever played Tex Murphy, he was involved. He played Tex Murphy, the voice actors, everything. It was great. I loved the Tesla Effect. I thought it was done really well. It's a little odd in that they hit a stretch goal to add more stages to the adventure game. Unfortunately, you can see as you play the game, you're pretty sure it's going to end. You go through a really hard puzzle. There's a huge cinematic. And you're like, oh, this is the end of the game. And then suddenly there's one more day of stuff to do tacked on. And you're like, ugh, that's where the stretch goal was. So you don't have to finish it, but it's really great. Retrotech Chris, I have an ADP 50 hard card in my Tandy. I think I saw online you have one too. I don't have an ADP 50 hard card, but I do have a Silicon Valley ADP 50. In fact, I've got 2 of them. And one of them is in use actually on this, on the PC you see right here on the screen. This one. That is currently running a Silicon Valley. In fact, what the heck? Let's actually see if we can prove it. Let's go into debug and start dumping some ROMs. Where are you hiding, Silicon Valley ADP? Nope, you're not there. You're probably here. There you are. Look at your ROM hiding at C800. There you go. Let's get out of that. Older Quantum and Connor hard drives, rubber stops turn into goo. Yes, they do. Thankfully, if you can as long as none of it gets on the platter, you can try to fix it. And CP Rasu, the black rubber goo sticks to everything. It is terrible. So, all right. I think we're almost caught up on the chat now. Pirate Gamer Boy, you were going to play something? Oh, I'm sorry. Am I talking too much? I mean, I never have a true agenda for these streams. I mean, honestly, I say 14 kilobyte subscriber special. That is the secondary reason this stream exists. The primary reason is I really wanted to see if AV1 streaming worked. And at the bitrate limits that I have, but I wanted it in 4K. And I think it's working fine. I mean, you tell me if the stream looks terrible, but I think since only a small portion of the screen is moving, I think it's fine. But yeah, the primary, these things are supposed to be mostly chat, but if we run out of chat, I am going to start playing a game. And you're like, I was going to play something, so I was going to play Hack. Whoops. Let's type better. Hack is the precursor to NetHack. And I can go into that in a bit. I'm just going to catch up on the chat real quick. John Donnelly, it would be a trip if it were actually Carlos Pacina. Agreed. However, if you come to the Midwest and you attend Midwest Gaming Classic, which is a show held in Wisconsin every April-ish, usually the guy or some sort of special gaming event at the Galloping Ghost Arcade in Brookfield, Illinois, you have a very high chance of seeing Danny Pacina. And I can tell you firsthand, he's a really nice guy. He and a couple of Mortal Kombat actors had a table at the last Midwest Gaming Classic that I attended. I think it was the one right before COVID. And of course, they had pictures, and they were trying to sign, they would sign and sell merch and things like that, pose for pictures for a fee or something like that. My son, who is my oldest son, who is autistic, wandered up to them and did not understand that, when you see celebrities selling things, you're supposed to, it's not just posters for viewing, you're supposed to buy something. But he went up to them and he chatted and he asked some questions. And I when I walked up to catch him, I just saw Danny Pacina smiling and answering all of his questions and not asking anything in return. Guy's all right in my book. All right, let's see. Donald Rivers, Soda was my demo scene name. That's not a bad name. So far, one of my favorite, I think the funniest or one of my most favorite demo scene names for a scener, which I discovered by walking behind him in the piss tunnel at Revision 2015. Dr. Scientist. I don't know why, it just tickles me. Dr. Scientist. All right. CP Rasu, you were talking Epson computers earlier, which reminds me I got to rag it out. Equity 1. Wild how the floppy drive heads connect directly to the main board. I think you meant how the floppy drive connects to the main board. Yes, the power of integration. That was a big selling point of a lot of clones, in that you didn't have to buy an extra floppy controller. And in fact, the clone that we owned, the AT&T 6300, which was a USA rebrand of the Olivetti M24, its major selling point, apart from the fact that it was twice as fast as a PC, was that it was a smaller form factor, so smaller on your desk, and had parallel port, serial port, and floppy controllers built, and display adapter, all built, well, not display adapter, serial parallel floppy built onto the motherboard, which meant more free slots for you. So it's good stuff. All right. Thanks for confirming the stream looks good. Again, this is a 4K 30 stream, although it's probably streaming at 1440p at 30 frames per second, and we are shoving this down a 6 megabit pipe with the power of AV1 encoding. This is the free in terms of licensing video next generation video codec after H.265 or advanced video coding. So AV1 so far seems to be doing pretty well. Stream looks great. CPU Rasu, I dreaded working on 286s, the BIOS utility to adjust anything on floppy, similar compact. Hey, at least you had a BIOS utility. A lot of 286 systems don't even have that, especially the original AT. You had to boot a floppy disk to set up the CMOS, and thank goodness that the system with a completely empty CMOS defaulted to a 5 1/4 inch drive, a 5 1/4 inch 360K drive, so that all it could do was boot the setup floppy, and then you could set it up. Let's go to the PC here, because someone said that CGA Snow is crazy. Well, if you want to see something else that's crazy, let's generate CGA Snow on purpose. The CGA compatibility tester, which you can find online, specifically has a test to generate CGA Snow. And to prove this is a real system, well, I mean, I guess some emulators, will do this too now, but this is a real system, and that's real CGA Snow. So CGA Snow, for those who don't know, is a display artifact because the memory is not dual ported on a CGA video card. And what that means is that if the CPU and the card try to access video memory at the same time, the CPU wins, and the CGA card, instead of reading the byte at the location, it will read random garbage. And so that's what you're seeing. So how am I generating the snow? I'm just all I'm doing is reading I think I'm reading one word constantly in RAM, and I'm doing it in a very tight loop, which means that half the time the CPU wins and half the time the video card wins. So isn't that fun? Let's see. Okay, K-Panic has some, it scrolled off the screen, but he has some helpful advice for people in the chat. Connor Drives about fixing the rubber stops. Thank you, sir. Pi Caruso, what is the best way to implement double buffering for VGA mode 3H game? I'm hoping you meant 13H, which is the 320, 200, 256 color mode. Double buffering for that, you don't. It's only got one 64K page, which is 320 by 200 by 256 colors. Technically, it's 64,000 bytes exactly, although there is 64K, 65536 bytes actually available. So the answer is you don't. So then what you do is you look into reprogramming the VGA into unchained mode. And what unchained mode is it turns the card from kind of a chunky processing where each byte in a row is each pixel on the screen in a row to a planar hybrid mode where each byte sequentially are different planes, and you can select which plane you're reading and writing to. Unfortunately, the planes are not linear. They're kind of weird. They're vertical. They go. Explaining VGA Unchained mode would probably be best suited for a completely different stream. But look up VGA Unchained mode, and if you can handle the programming and the different memory arrangement, once you put it in that mode, you really unlock VGA. You can have a 320 by 240 mode, which is square pixels and a 60 hertz refresh rate, and you can have multiple video pages. And you can even do things like double the horizontal resolution. Some games used 320 by 400 to display cooler still graphics or title graphics. So that's what you want. If you really did mean 3H, That's color text mode. So if you're writing a game in color text mode and you want multiple video pages, there's enough room on all video cards, all color video cards, for 4 total video pages, and all you have to do is change the start address register to show which one you're pointing at. So let's keep going. Let's catch up on the chat. CP Rasu. On the Equity, the floppy controller and the board that would normally be on the floppy drive were integrated on the main board. Oh, well, that is a little bit weirder. I have never opened up an Equity, so I will take your word for it. The Columbia MPC 1600 is amazing. Many people don't know that it predates the Compact Portable as a cleanroom PC clone. I think it does, but I think it got busted first. It was either the Columbia or the Corona. One of those two, they got busted for copying IBM's BIOS. And then they had to clean room it. So it's either the Columbia or the Corona. Let's see. I have both an MPC 1600 and the portable version now. I have the portable. It's the only one with a color screen, right? The luggable with a color CGA screen. I've got one of them coming to me later in the year that it's in working order, and I have one in my collection that is not working. George Strobel. Oh gosh, now we're getting into nostalgia. I am not normally a nostalgia person because my mission is to try to promote accurate vintage computer history by setting the record straight, showing where people can look up actual facts instead of taking their word for it. For example, the PC Junior chiclet keyboard, it's not as bad as you think. It's not as bad as the press makes out. Why don't you actually try it? Okay, but I recognize some people like nostalgia. So, what is my earliest childhood computer memory? For George, in 1983, when he was 5, he remembers writing C64 games from the code published in Compute's Gazette magazines, aka type-ins. I also have fond memories of type-ins. Mine came from Family Computing magazine. I was always a little disappointed that they weren't as colorful or cool sounding on the PC as they were on other systems. But yes, a person named Joey Latimer did all the basic games, practically all the basic games, for almost the entire run of Family Computing magazine. And I recommend picking it up because it's a really fun read, and it's really interesting to see what personal computing was before it was down to just Mac and IBM. But that's not my earliest memory. My earliest childhood computer memory is in the mid-'70s when I was 6 years old. My father worked for Teletype Corporation. He had 2 degrees, one in engineering and one in journalism. And he found a job at Teletype writing technical manuals. Perfect combination of the skills, right? And he would occasionally bring his work home. And the earliest memory I have interacting with anything with a keyboard and a screen is he brought home a serial logic analyzer. This was something you would, with a keyboard and a screen, that you would connect in between 2 serial. It was a serial protocol analyzer. So you connect it in line into a serial communication, and it would, you could configure it and try to figure out, is this 8 bits or 7 bits? Is this ASCII? Is this EBCDIC? That kind of thing. And he had me sit on his lap, and I would hit keys on the keyboard, and I would see the letter I hit show up on the tiny little one-line screen. It was a gas plasma screen. I remember that. That's the very, very first memory I have of operating a computer. After that, I think the next memory I have in 1979 was using an educational game on an Apple II. I don't even think it was a 2 Plus. On an Apple II. We had one of them in the entire elementary school. And then the year after that, 1980, I played Colossal Cave Adventure on an Osborne CPM system at my friend's house across the street. And that, as they say, is the start of the journey. All right. Pi Caruso, both TechSelect and TubeTime designed some pretty good ISA sound card clones or original designs. What's the one you like the most? TechSelect is Kevin. I forget his last name. He's a great guy. TechSelect is his full-time business. He does a great job. You are currently seeing this real PC screen thanks to his implementation of RGB to HDMI. His is lower cost because it only does TTL. That's fine because all I need is TTL. Let's go back to something here. I'm intrigued by the 4-channel FM sound card from TechSelect, but I don't. He marketed it as quad stereo, and I guess what I would have preferred instead is to make it compatible in some way with like OPL4 games or something like that. So, and as for TubeTime, I'm not familiar with every reproduction sound card he's done, but I have to give props to the Snark Barker for having the coolest name ever. The Snark Barker makes me laugh every time I say it. What a funny name. Yeah, that'll get past copyright. Sure. It's not a Sound Blaster, it's a Snark Barker. All right. John Donnelly, those extra 536 bytes, even going back to mode 13 hex now, 320, 200, 256 mode, could serve as a palette or something. Well, you'd think, but they didn't do that. The palette is 768 bytes on the card itself, and it's in hardware, and you access a palette entry by writing to a port. You select which palette entry, and then with a byte to a port that I can't remember right now, and then you write the R, the G, and the B values to that port plus 1 in succession, and it will set the R, the G, and the B values for that palette. So, although you can use VGA RAM to hold a second font set, and that is some VGA dark wizardry that I never got into, but it is possible, and that is a place where you would use VGA RAM for doing something. There's a joke we had in the 1990s demo scene, which was someday someone is going to come out with a demo that uses Gravis Ultrasound sound card RAM for graphics and graphics RAM for sound. Nobody ever. I don't think anybody actually did that, although I do know of one demo that couldn't fit in 640K, and they did use unused VGA RAM as scratch space. I think it was honestly I think it was Chronologia by Cascada. I think it was during the dance scene. It'd be really funny to see if someone could dump the video RAM on that thing running and see what happens. All right. Donald Rivers, should I charge capacitors on my 5150 before I turn it on? It's been a while since I used it. That is the conventional wisdom that you should. The best practice wisdom is you would have a variable power supply on your bench, and you'd plug it in, flip the switch to on, and slowly bring up the load. That's what you're supposed to do. If you have an AT or an XT286, that may not work for the whole system because those power supplies will only deliver. I'm not an electrical engineer, so forgive me if I speak incorrectly about this, but their PSUs won't deliver the power unless they sense like a load. So like you only get the system to power on if you've got like a hard drive connected or something. And then they'll actually push all the power through. But you could still do it anyway and just try to warm up the PSU, I guess. If you do flip it on cold, usually the first thing that will blow is a REFA cap, which it was meant to condition the I believe it was meant to condition the line voltage. If a REFA cap blows, it makes a loud pop and it lets out some black smoke. Don't panic. You can actually when it pops short, which is actually not what you want. The system won't work. You can desolder just the REFA cap and turn the system back on, and it will actually probably work. But you shouldn't leave it that way. You should put in a new cap. All right, let's see what we got here. Starlight, my go-to solution to being annoyed at 286 BIOSes is replacing it with one that has a menu. Good old AMI BIOSes. You can pop them in a lot of things. Pi Caruso, he did mean 3 hex before. He's doing a text mode game featuring some basic rendering. Okay, well, in that case, you've got 2 super easy choices. If there is a concept of a visible page and a hidden page, and text mode is divided, 80 by 25 text mode is divided up into 4 pages in the BIOS API in the int13 BIOS. And you can pick which page is visible. And just by adding to your offset, they're at B800. And offset 0 from that segment is the first page. Offset 1000, I think I've got that right, doing the hex in my head, is the next page. 2000 is the next page, and whatever. So you can avoid the BIOS completely if you want. It's super easy to change the start address register on the 6845 character generator. There should be a ton of references online on how to do this. You write to anywhere you want on the card, and then you just set the display start address to where that data starts, and then on the next refresh, it'll start showing that area of video RAM. Another nice thing is that you don't have to do anything special. You can write to that. You can change the start address at any time because the registers are latched. So as soon as you're done, go ahead and write the registers. It won't change like mid-frame. It'll complete the cycle, and then it'll go up to the top and switch. Pi Caruso, if someone says that the OPL3 was underused and you can do as well with an OPL2, they are not into trackers. I'm not sure how to respond to that. You can do great stuff on both, but if you have an OPL3, you've got a better tool set. So, I would prefer an OPL3. Pirate Gamer Boy, my earliest computer memory is from the early 2000s. We had a computer that looked like a PCXT and had an amber monitor, and I know it ran Xtree. Can't remember if it was a real IBM or a clone. It was probably a clone, if it had an amber monitor. And it ran Xtree. Well, that's cool. That's a cool first memory. Xtree has those kind of cool, funky logo letters when it starts up. That's got to be neat to see when you do it. People, speaking of Xtree, people might have seen this earlier if you've stayed with the chat, stayed with the stream for a while. PC Valet. I pirated a lot of software as a teenager, but I pirated Xtree, and I never liked it. I don't know why. Like the fact that you have to hit enter to change modes and stuff, it just seemed kind of weird. Whereas PC Valet was like this shareware clone. I wonder if the help still works in this. Does the help still work? Yeah. Yeah, 88 to 94. So in 88, PC Valet came out, and it lets you do things like, tag files, and then you can copy them or delete. Most of what I use PC Valet for is very quickly navigating my directory tree, and like also tagging stuff and mass deleting it. But come on, what else do you need? Let's see. Still catching up on the chat. I'm sorry your computer was thrown away 20 years ago, Pirate Gamer Boy. That happened to me. Once my family's first PC was given to a family member. 2 years later, I asked them if they were still using it, and if not, could I have it back? And they said, "Oh, I threw that junk away." Oh, well. Of course, now I have like 5 of them because the system you grew up with, usually you have in duplicate or triplicate in your personal collection. John Donnelly, more memories? My memories. He saw more computers on TV until he used the Apple II in elementary school. Not a problem. Obi-Wan Bill Kenobi. I'm late. What's up? Obi-Wan, we are just having an informal Q&A stream. We're just talking. I'm trying to answer some questions and spew out some hopefully entertaining random trivia and possibly help people with their vintage computer system problems. And if we run out of things to talk about, and there's still stream time left, I might play a game on a real PCXT. Ooh, John Donnelly, I like my first demo scene memory. Involved a trip to CompUSA. Let me guess, they were running a Future Cruise. Yep, they ran Future Cruise Panic. That, man, if that's the first time you see a really good demo and you have no idea what the demo scene is, blows your mind. I think it can still happen today. There are some 4K productions that are mind-blowing. I know how the sausage is made, and they blow my mind. So it's still possible. It's great. Okay. Arugas01. My dad bought a PC Junior, and he splurged for 2 memory cards and a Palo card. Well, and you had a pretty functional PC, right, when you got there. Pop break, which may have to switch to a water break because I feel my throat's starting to go. I really want to catch up in the chat. I am behind, so I'm going to give more terse answers. Here we go. Donald Rivers, Chronologia and Ultra Force were the first demos I watched before I discovered Future Crew. Pretty good demos, man. I think the first, I think I've gone on record before as saying that the Space Pigs Mega demo was the first demo I recognized as a demo. I'd seen them before, but it didn't click until that one. I was like, oh, that was created specifically as a demo. There is a scene of this stuff. What is it? And that's what started it. But I think the second demo that impressed me that much was the Ultra Force demo. And that one had kick-ass music, which I didn't realize until later that it was cobbled together from various house tracks. So, lots of good stuff in the comments. In the real-time chat. Feel free to scroll up and talk a bit. Yes, the Ultra Force Vector demo. Great stuff. Aruga said, I sent in a card to PC Enterprises and they'd send me catalogs for upgrade stuff for the PC Junior. I could never afford them, but I dreamed of souping it up. I did that too. We did not, despite living in a fairly affluent area, we lived in a somewhat affluent North Shore area in Illinois when I was growing up. However, that was the result of my father's very diligent and clever money management. But although we lived in that area, we were not rich. We didn't actually have a computer until he was able to get one on an employee discount from AT&T. And up to that point, instead of having a computer, what I had was access at my school and computer magazines. So we couldn't afford a computer in 1983, but we could afford a computer magazine subscription. So I read and read and read until we finally offered one. And then I would also, like you, send in the cards. This is where I'm going for. I would get a PC magazine and I would get out the reader service cards and I would circle like every goddamn number that appealed to me. And I got so much cool shit in the mail. Demo discs. And one of the best things I have is an ad-lib advertisement on a flexi disc record. I will put this online someday. I want to be so sad. I have done so much archival work over the decades. Just once, I would like to be recognized for saving something. So I will put the contents of that ad-lib flexi disc record up. It's like from 1986 or 87. Anyway, I'll put it up at some point. All right. Yi2 says, did you explain why the snow appears when you navigate in the PC Valet software? I did not explain it, but I can show you why it happens. It's because I told it to. If you hit O for options, down in the options right here, you can see video snow, yes or no. Now, if I change it, if I toggle that, let's see what happens. See, it's still not great. On the left side of the screen, you can still see that there's snow, but it's not everybody knew how to program an assembler well. I'm not saying John Junud was not a good assembler programmer. He was. This is a great program, but not everybody understood the ins and outs of the hardware. To him, this is snow avoidance. but his code is not optimal. So the snow is sneaking in over on the left side. Now later, if I go back to that and toggle it, video snow no, meaning what he's saying is, does your card suffer from snow? If you say no, he won't try to avoid snow at all. And so now you see it all over the place. But if you go back and answer yes, my card suffers from snow, he'll go, okay, I'll try to avoid it, but it's still here on the left side. All right, catching up in the comments yet again. We used PC Shell 5.5, but it won't run in DOSBox, probably because it has some cap for maximum hard drive size. Yep. Remember, kids, DOSBox is helpful, but it isn't a real PC. DOSBox is an emulator that emulates no actual PC. No PC in the whole world existed that DOSBox emulates. I like to pick on DOSBox. DOSBox is great for, I just want to point this at a directory on my real system and have something go. And it's great for that. But, as this stream hopefully shows, I keep the real hardware around too, just in case. Catching up. I still use a program on my PC called Power Menu. It has nested text box mode menus. I used to love those programs. I used to collect them. I never needed them. I just thought that they themselves were neat. I was also surprised that the most popular one was like Direct Access, which is this huge bloated batch file using like monstrosity that I have no idea how Direct Access got so popular. I have a feeling they might have had some deal with law offices or something. Maybe a bundle with WordPerfect. The Total DOS collection, which unfortunately I don't think I can demonstrate on this actual system, but I'm going to see if I can. The Total DOS launcher, which is a menu system I created for for your zipped DOS games collection, doesn't use batch files. It swaps itself out of RAM when you execute something, and it can do so in less than one sector of memory. So it uses less than 512 bytes to do so. So you didn't need to use these bloated menu systems that used batch files that were slow as hell. I'm going to let this run to see if TDL is on here. If it is, we can have some fun, but I actually don't think it's on here. I think I removed it when I needed more space for Area 5150, actually. K-Panic. One of my earliest memories is 5-year-old me sitting on my dad's lap and playing King's Quest together on the AT he got from home. I tried to do the same thing with my son. My oldest son, Sam, I introduced him to computers when he was 3 years old with Putt Putt Joins the Parade. The DOS, 320, 200, 256 version. And he sat on my lap, and together we moved the mouse and clicked on things and made things happen, and he laughed and laughed, and that is when I felt like I was not totally failing as a parent. First time I saw Donald Rivers, first time I saw King's Quest was on some computer they had at a YMCA that lots of people were playing. First times I saw King's Quest was at my friend Court Funk's house. This is my oldest friend. I've known him since I was 2.5 years old. His father had an IBM PC XT, and he got King's Quest for, I think, his birthday. And we fired it up, and we sat in front of that thing for hours and hours trying to figure out those damn puzzles. Hey, here's a fun fact about King's Quest. If you have the original booter version, the Rumpelstiltskin puzzle is way harder than the DOS version. The DOS version, the Rumpelstiltskin, you have to type something, and it's like a cipher of Rumpelstiltskin. It's like a ROT 13 of it or something. And all the letters are lined up. You get enough clues, you can do it on your own. The booter version, the original version, the 1984 version, you have to do the same thing, but then enter Rumpelstiltskin's converted name backwards. And at no point is there any clue in the game for that. And that is the first time we ever called a company to try to get a hint on how the hell do you complete this game? And he called on the speakerphone, and I remember in 85, I don't think they had a dedicated helpline. I think we ended up going to customer support or something. Isn't that weird? Catching up in the comments. Pi Caruso 97. Recently, PCEMU made some headlines because of the large variety of hardware it can emulate with fairly good compatibility. Have you tried it? If yes, how's the PC XT compatibility? I have not tried it, but I believe I can vouch for it because I believe that is one of the emulators I mentioned earlier that has Andrew Jenner's 8088 core in it. So, if I'm right about that, shoot, I don't have the full TDL on here, so I'm afraid I can't show you that menu system. Oh well. Then it should be fine. It's PC. It's either PCE or PCEMU. I'll tell you this: any emulator that you can start 88 miles per hour on, and when it starts up, if it says thank you for running this on real hardware, that is an emulator that I would start to trust. So, and I should know because I wrote that little routine. It's no big deal. It's just a simple CPU synthetic benchmark, but it's accurate to within 4 cycles. So if your system does not emulate the majority of the 8088 cycle exact, then it won't pass. So use 88 miles per hour as your litmus test. If it says thanks for using this on real hardware, go ahead and use the emulator. Donald Rivers, if you use BIOS calls to write to the screen, it won't have snow. Correct. But it will be slow AF. Correct. If the BIOS had a routine for writing an entire string, they might have written better routines. But if you look at the code, it's not bad code for avoiding snow. It's kind of it's optimized for size, not speed or effectiveness. You can always write a character if you turn off this. You know what? We're going to do that right now. Let's see if I can do that. Can I do this? Yep. Okay. So you'll notice there's no snow here, and this is the BIOS routines. But you may also notice that it's going blip, 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 and it's flickering and flickering. That's because what the BIOS does is it physically disables signal generation while it writes the character, and then it turns it back on again. So yeah, if the whole screen is turned off when you write a character, sure, there's not going to be snow, but then you've got this ugly flickering. I grew up I had access to PCs, but my first PC in my house was a clone, and it also suffered from snow. And I very quickly learned, if you had one of these speed up programs, they would speed up text mode, but then you'd have this snow. I learned early on to just get used to snow. And I think people who see it, they're like, why would you leave that there? Why would you not do anything to avoid it? I'm like, after a while, it's like the Matrix. After a while, I don't even see the numbers anymore. I don't even see the code. All right, let's see. John Donnelly, what do you think of the other forms of DOSBox? I support, is that the right word? I support DOSBox X. The great Codeholio, who is one of the primary maintainers of that fork, cares very much about trying to make it more compatible with real hardware. Now, DOSBox can never perfectly emulate any one specific piece of hardware, but DOSBox X has gone through a lot of trouble to try to get everything right. You have a very, very good chance of getting a really hacky, tweaky demo running in DOSBox X. And he's also written a testing hardware compatibility library that he uses to test on real hardware and measure what it does, and then he reproduces it in DOSBox X. So I do recommend that. I used to use some others. I used to use one that had fancy GPU shaders to emulate a CRT. Got one right behind me, so I don't really need that. I've used one before that came with Roland MT32 and SCC1 GS ROM sets, so you had like great sound. Actually, one second, let me take another pop break and I'll tell you about one more variant. There is a variant out there that I'm not entirely sure I'm allowed to talk about. I just don't want to make the person who made it mad if I'm not supposed to talk about it. There is a version of DOSBox out there that has been hacked to work with a certain magnetic flux reversal diskette format. And it emulates a floppy controller perfectly to be used with that format. And so it allows that version of DOSBox to run to run floppy disk copy protected software natively. And in fact, that author uses that fork to crack games that are copy protected, or at least investigate them at a very low level. Again, I'm not sure I'm supposed to talk about it because I don't think it's massively publicly available, so I do apologize. But you know what? DOSBox X is great. Use that. Catching up in the comments, Obi-Wan Bill Kenobi is thinking of towing a U-Haul trailer to VCF Midwest just to bring a bunch of computers. Really? And it's been almost as you take. Hey, if you bring them, if you want a table to try to sell them, make sure you're part of the VCF Midwest mailing list. And when we have table, signups ready, we'll send a note out and you can do that and request a table. If you don't want a table and you just want to get rid of them, you can donate them to the VCF Midwest and they will go into various functions. If they work or are useful, they might go into the auction, and the proceeds from that help fund next year's show, or this year's show if we came up short. I'm just kidding about that. We're pretty good about funding next year's show. However, the show after that is always up in the air, which is why we hold an auction. At VCF Midwest, we don't charge for admission. We don't charge for tables. We put on the show ourselves. We started it with our own seed money, and after a while, donations helped repay that money, and now the donations help fund the show. So that's where that goes. If they're broke and crappy, we can still throw them on the free pile, and then someone will get a really cool project to take home. So Obi-Wan Bill, I hope to see you at VCF Midwest in some fashion. Pirate Gamer Boy says, I saw Fantavision in that directory search. Cool stuff. You're right. I could show you Fantavision. What the heck? I could show you Fantavision, but it is so disappointing on a 4 megahertz 8088. It really, and CGA too. It's so sad. It's the dancing bear. It's not how well the bear dances. It's that the bear dances at all. I get that, but it's just so slow. If anyone who wants to really appreciate Fantavision, I highly recommend running it on its original platform, the Apple II. Obi-Wan Bill, thank you, and Arugus, thank you for confirming my King's Quest Hell, which was not backwards spelling, but spelling forwards using a backwards alphabet. Yes, I could swear on this stream. I would love to swear on this stream, but I'm going to try to keep it clean just so that the YouTube gods are happy. But screw that puzzle, man. Screw that puzzle with a broom handle. We worked on it. My friend Court and we worked on it. I have memories of us working on it for like 2 hours, thinking we were crazy. And then finally we had to pay long distance to call Sierra to get well, his dad paid for the long distance call, which he never knew about. But yeah, screw that puzzle, man. Let's see. K-Panic. The Sierra adventures were how I started learning English. Really? Sitting in front of the PC with a huge dictionary on my lap. That is so cool. That's really great. That's like when I hear people taught themselves English via movies or TV shows or something like that. That is so cool. I am glad that games were able to impact your life positively. That is so neat. Hey, it's Alan Hightower. I hope you're still here. As you can tell, I'm really behind in the chat. We were actually talking about your one sound card to rule them all project, and I was explaining that COVID made everything very difficult, and so you put that project on the back burner. We're talking about Ted's MLC 86 Junior. We were not. We were actually talking about software emulators. The MLC 86 Junior, if I remember correctly, you're correct in saying it's pretty cycle accurate, but it is not exactly cycle accurate. For example, I don't think it runs Area 5150 correctly because we have down to the cycle accurate effects in that demo. And if the CPU is not cycle accurate or running at the correct speed, we are bit banging video modes. So that's why most emulators can't run it. But if it can, I would love to know. Cool to see you, Alan. I hope I see more of you IRL, as the kids say. Catching up on the comments. I'm almost at the end. We might actually get to play a small game here with some trivia. Obi-Wan Bill Kenobi says that he hugely prefers text parsers to mouse icons in adventure games. I think it depends on what you grew up with. I think it depends on the nature of the mouse-driven interface. I've seen great mouse interfaces. I've seen terrible ones. The Sierra Adventures were frustrating to me in that it was a text parser, like an interactive fiction game, but it was also dependent on the positioning of your avatar. So if you wanted to, in an interactive fiction game, if you're in a room with a key and you say, take key, it goes taken. In a Sierra game, if you're in a room with a key, but you're not right next to it, you say take key and it goes, you are too far away. Okay? So then you walk the avatar over and then you take key and then you take the key. If the game knew you were too far away, why didn't it just walk you over there to take the key? Why? The positional avatar in those AGI and SCI games was a gimmick rather than anything useful. And to date, it's why I've only finished like a handful of those games. I really don't like them. I understand they were breaking ground. It was a no man's land when they started. Some ideas worked, some didn't. I get that. But that doesn't mean I have to like it. Pirate Gamer Boy, DOSBox X has PC98 application support. Boy, does it ever. CodeHolio has spent years adding PC98 support to it. So if you want to run PC98 stuff, you have a pretty darn good emulator to do so. Catching up some more. I remember Fantavision on an Apple II GS, says Arugus01. Was there a 2GS specific version of Fantavision? I don't think there was. I could be wrong. I'm going to do a very quick... wrong keyboard. I'm going to do a quick... and they're both buckling spring keyboards. That's what makes this all so confusing. If I could tilt my camera down, I've got the Model F83 key right in front of me so that I can type on the computer and you guys can see it in the stream. And then I've got my Model M, which is my daily driver, right above it, so it's super easy to confuse them. Apple II. Oh, yes. Apple version released specifically for the 2GS. What do you know? And Amiga and DOS. The DOS version wasn't bad if you had EGA in a 286. In fact, I actually used it to produce some slideshow animations for a company I worked at the time. It was capable. It's just that on CGA, which is slower, and on 8088 at 4 megahertz, Fantavision's not so great. So, I mean, it takes like minutes to get through one of the demo animations, so that's why I'm not firing it up for you. Donald Rivers, Lemmings at 4 megahertz with CGA. Oh, good gravy. That's terrible. My condolences. Pi Caruso, taught yourself English trying to figure out stuff using the internet. Also very cool. Anyone who teaches themselves a language, even if it's not a conversational language like a computer language, just by intellectual curiosity and just reading, and consulting references, my hat is off to you, sir. I speak one conversational language, which is the language I'm using right now. And I've always, I understand and speak un petit peu of French, but that is about it. I really wish I could do more. Okay, Alan, still here. Real life is kicking your butt. Dude, I totally get it. Already today, once I've used that phrase from Ian. He was a philosopher. What was his name? Wrong keyboard. The reason there's a point to this. Ian McLaren. It's always misattributed to Plato, but Ian McLaren said it. He has this wonderful phrase. It's one of my favorite phrases. It's, "Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle." And I'm paraphrasing, but that's roughly what it is. And, it's so true. Be nice to people, because you don't know what they're going through. They could have a really great front, and inside they're dying. So I hear you, man. I hope you get through real life, and I hope to see you again. And it's always great talking to you. Alan has impressed me both on purpose and by accident more times than more fingers than I have on both hands. So he's a cool dude. Alan asks, has anyone documented all the revisions of the Sierra driver interfaces in various AGI and CG and SCI engines? I believe so. I believe they've been reverse engineered to hell. I know that someone whose first name starts with P. Crap. Oh, he's going to kill me if he sees the stream. Forgive me for forgetting your name. There is someone who David and I worked with after the release of Planet X3 for DOS. Well, it only came out for DOS. Who created lots of additional graphics driver support, and he also created graphics drivers for SCI games. Either SCI or the one later that was the 256 version, the 256 color version of the interpreter. People in the last... all right, let me back up and simplify. People in the last decade have created new graphics drivers for Sierra games that provide graphics... that provide the ability to show those graphics on adapters that the games did not originally support. The two that come to mind are... the 256 color games can be shown with acceptable quality on EGA 640 by 200 16 color. So, two thin pixels dither together to create a fat pixel. And the same thing, not on EGA, but on, I think, the Plantronics Color Plus, because this individual is a Plantronics fan. I know some people have added additional sound support to Sierra games that didn't originally come with the drivers or support the devices. Great Hierophant online has a great blog where he covers a lot of this stuff. I believe you can search his blog for news of that. You can probably also search Vogons and get information about that as well. Catching up in the chat. Pickle says, do I use PCM? And if so, what's my opinion of it? I do not use it. It has been used by people in my demo group during various coding sessions of 88 miles per hour and Area 5150 as a convenient way to write some code and test it out on something that is more accurate than DOSBox. But I don't use it because you have to inject your files into a floppy disk image and then boot the image. And when I code, I code on this system here. And I'll show you. I've got... Maybe I should pull up something real quick and we can take a look at it. What the heck? Let's try the CJ compatibility tester. I actually don't know which version this is, but when I do stuff, I suppose I could inject all my files into a hard drive image and use it that way. It's just, let's pull up some code here. Let's pull up something interesting, actually. I don't know. I just... It's always seemed kind of clunky to me. If PCEM could have some sort of like redirector support where you could add something or modify something in your host computer's file system and have it automatically show up in PCEM, that like DOSBox does, I think it would be much more convenient, and I would probably use it for that. So, gosh, what is all this stuff that loaded? Now we're still loading stuff. There we go. Anyhow, so I actually do write my 8088 software on a real 8088. I mean, not all the time. Sometimes I prototype it in DOSBox and get like the basics out of the way. But when it comes to stuff like this, you know, where I'm doing exact stuff, well, actually it's not timing dependent, but if I'm doing something that is timing dependent or hardware dependent, I will write it and compile it and assemble it on the system so that I can immediately run the code. For me, that's fastest. For some other people, like Andrew Jenner, I mentioned before, his one of his favorite workflows is to do everything in NASM on a Windows machine, and then he has his XT set up. So brilliant. He has his XT set up as like a server that accepts remote code sent over either not serial, sent over the keyboard port, which is then connected and modified to go to either TCP/IP or serial via an Arduino, I think it is. I'd love for him to write that whole thing up. It's so cool. And what he'll do is he'll write on Windows and he'll assemble in NASM, and then he'll quickly send his code over, and it will immediately execute on his XT. That's fast, and that's cool. I can't do that. He has not mass produced this interface. So I sometimes find it super easy to just do my work on the actual machine. So to answer your, that's the long answer, long story longer. I have used PCEM a couple of times, and there's nothing inherently wrong with it. I just prefer to use the real hardware. And I don't mean just XTs. I mean, I have 286s, 386s, 486s, Pentiums, Pentium Pros. Past that, it's a huge jump. I completely skipped the slot processors, and I went from a Pentium Pro to a Pentium 2 233. My very next machine was a 1 gigahertz Athlon, and then my next machine after that was a 2 gigahertz Pentium 4, I think. And then past that, it was an Athlon 64. And then, trying to remember. And then an i7, a Core i7 920, the very first Core i7s. And I ran that thing into the ground. It barely runs for more than 5 minutes. I must have fried something on the motherboard. Well, I overclocked it for like 8 years, so of course I fried something on it. And then I did a Core i7 8700. Ran that for 5 years, and now I'm on my brand new rig that I built a couple of months ago, and it is glorious. It is a Raptor Lake i9 3900 with a with an NVIDIA RTX 4090, and I can't tell you how wonderful it is to have my computer waiting for me, not the other way around. Back to the chat. Let's see. Pirate Gamer Boy. There are some games from the 90s with CGA support that do okay on a 4 MHz PC, and some VGA only ones too. Dune runs shockingly well. Dune does not rely on like action graphics, so I can understand that. Dune was also written by very talented French people, and I can understand that would be great too. Pop break. Continuing that thought, Arugas says, I somehow played most of Maniac Mansion on the PC Junior in CGA mode, slow as molasses, and only 4 terrible colors. Well, if you played it on a Tandy 1000, it was still slow as molasses, except this time it was in 16 colors and 3-voice sound. But it was actually in some ways even slower because those extra colors meant double the video RAM to sling around. And so even in the intro, when the comet goes and then it has to scroll over to the house from in Maniac Mansion, you can like see it drawing line by line. They could have written it better too, but I don't know. I go back and forth on. It used to be. It's really weird becoming a subject matter expert on a specific machine. I think I can call myself that. I hope I'm not breaking my arm patting myself on the back. But when you become like I now consider myself really good with this machine. I write stuff in assembler. And when you get this good, I tried to get this good to impress teenage me, and succeeded. But then I started doing other fun stuff like disassembling games and trying to figure out how they did some stuff so fast and whatever. And then sometimes it can be disappointing because you'll run across something that you never got a chance to actually try. Like you only read about it in magazines or whatever. And then when you finally do try it, it's a huge disappointment. And I remember reading something about some piece of software like, oh, the clever programming and is able to do this and this and super fast. And then I actually run it on that target hardware and it's like garbage. It's like terrible. I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that thought. Anyone ever play Cybergenic Ranger? It's the game I love to crap on. And thankfully, I thought I was the only person crapping on it. It had digitized graphics and digitized audio through the speaker because they licensed real sound. You look at the box and you're like, this game looks awesome. And then you start the game and it kind of starts pretty awesome. It's got good graphics, great sound. And then the game starts and when you move the character in Cybergenic Ranger, you do it with the arrow keys, which is fine. But the guy never learned how to program an interrupt, keyboard interrupt. So you have to tap the keys to make him move forward, back, up and down. If you hold down the key, he goes once, and then the keyboard repeat kicks in, and he goes, dunk, 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 dunk. It's a joke. Sometimes that's the curse of being really good with the system, is that, sometimes you're super disappointed with the code. Thankfully, I am not the only person to crap on Cybergenic Ranger. I am not alone. There was a Games Done Quick charity event where someone speedrun Cybergenic Ranger, and I was vindicated. They were crapping on it so much, and they had so many funny things to say about how bad this logic was. At one point there's this platforming section where if you go off screen and then come back, the platforms are gone. So it's practically impossible to finish if you have to scroll for some reason, like, avoiding a bullet or an enemy. So anyway, Games Done Quick. Yeah, John F. Donnelly catching right up. Cyber MST3K. That's actually why I watch Games Done. I think isn't that right? Games Done Quick. Is that the name of the charity event? That's actually why I watch them. It's not necessarily the speedruns. It's to get some of the cool behind the scenes commentary. Someone else did a jokey speed run of Mega Man for DOS, the one that was ported by High Tech Expressions. Turns out it was all done by one guy, and as a Mega Man game, it's bad. As an NES game, as a ported NES game, it's bad. But as a one-man effort doing everything on his own with no access to the original code or graphics, it's actually really cool. And the people who speed ran it were respectful of that. I mean, they crapped on it too, but they also gave it props where necessary. So I thought that was really cool. Don River says, Commander Keen ran okay at 4 megahertz on CGA. It's barely playable. Any Turbo XT is better. Anything other than 4 megahertz, I think, is appropriate for Commander Keen. Arugas 01, yeah, you never know what people are going through. Absolutely. So I've tried to be less of a jerk and more empathetic and understanding as I get older. Because you never know. You never know I had a friend once who his mother was rich, his father was rich. He had so many toys and video games. I remember going to his house and playing Pong in 1976 attached to a television. I thought it was the future. He always had all the cool Star Wars toys. And then later, I learned that his home life was horrible. His parents fought constantly. And it was an abusive environment. And eventually the parents got divorced. So you never know. Well, let's bring the chat up a bit. Let's see. I've been going on. Hey, is the stream still in sync, by the way? Did I finally fix that? That'd be cool if the stream were still in sync. Somebody tell me. Let's catch up in the chat yet some more. K-Panic tried to reverse engineer the original AGI graphics routines, adding support for the PC 1512 graphics and or the Color Plus, but you gave it pretty early. Well, you may be happy to know that I'm almost positive someone did add an AGI driver for the Plantronics. No. Is the Color Plus the Plantronics, or is it the quad color? If it's Plantronics, I'm pretty sure someone already did that. So do some digging and you'll find it, and you'll be able to run AGI games in 16 colors on the Color Plus. Oh, here's a great question. Pi Caruso 97. What do you think about using the PCXT with a VGA card to avoid having to use TTL converters or vintage monitors? I think it's a great solution if you have no other solution. All right, well, let's go over the pros and cons. The pros of using a VGA card and a super slow XT is that all the software that doesn't bit bang CGA hardware will work perfectly. A lot of it will work better. It will take advantage of 80 by 50 mode, so you get more rows in your text editors and your word processors. You can run any program regardless of what graphics mode it uses. VGA interfaces are still common on hardware that you can get for $1 from Goodwill. There are a multitude of VGA to HDMI converters. So those are the pros. The cons is that if you do rely on something CGA specific, there are very few things where that would be the case, but if you wanted to run a couple of bootable games, or you wanted to run like our demos or something like that, then that would not work. Also, any game, the major con of using VGA in a slow XT for me is any game you want to run where you can't select exactly the graphics mode you want, because the game will auto detect VGA and then try to run VGA, and if it is something slow or something that you can't possibly run in VGA, there would be too much video memory to sling around, then of course the game's unplayable. I'm trying to think if there's any examples of that. Many, if not most, games allow you to pick what graphics mode you want. And the only other con really is that it's not terribly period accurate. I mean, there were people who ran VGA on XTs. It's just there weren't too many of them, and most of them who were doing it were only doing it to add soft font and higher res capabilities to WordPerfect. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not my personal choice. But hey, if it's the only way you can get something to run because you don't have a CRT, then yeah, sure, by all means. I mean, no one's gonna. If anyone tries to shame you. Here's another thing. Let's talk about vintage computing, like purity for a second here. If anyone tries to shame you for doing something with your vintage computer, just kick him in the face or tell him to talk to me or something, because, sometimes I'll see on discussions, people will take a perfectly good stock system and they'll be like, look at this great thing I got. And everyone's like, oh, cool. It's stock. It's in perfect condition. They're like, yeah. Well, I'm going to rip the motherboard out of it and put in a clone AT keyboard so I can play Commander Keen, or something like that. And everyone's like, oh, they get up in arms. Why would you do that? Look, it's your system. enjoy it the way you want to enjoy it. You know, there were people who got stock hardware back in the day. I hate that phrase, but and they did just that. They upgraded their machines by hacking the crap out of them and swapping the motherboard, or, you know, I mean, I can't tell you how many PCs I've seen with mismatched, differently colored floppy drive bezels. And it always looks weird. But, you know, hey, if that's what you want to do, it's your collection, it's your hobby. You enjoy it the way you want. The only time I've ever seen that backfire is when someone creates this like Franken clone of a system, and then they try to sell it, and they're like, why is no one meeting my $300 asking price? And it's because that system may be awesome and cool to you, but not to necessarily to anybody else. I mean, I saw some system that some guy was selling that had like 4 floppy drives in it, you know, one of each. Like, isn't this amazing? But it also looked like crap. Like, all of the bezel, like, you know, it had 2 beige and 2 black bezels. I don't know, there were other mods to it, and he's like, you know, screw eBay. How come no one's bidding on this? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it's because you're charging double for something that is only special to you. So that's the only time I've seen it backfire. All right. Boy, I'm so behind in the chat. I promised to get to everything. I really appreciate everybody's patience. If I miss something, I think I'm going to go for about another half hour until 11 p.m. Central Daylight Time. So if you really want an answer to something and I've missed it, please let me know. John Donnelly, thank you for telling me I have fixed the sink. I am so happy. It could still break, but what I did was, I think what was screwing with the sink is that I have a 4-drive Intel storage RAID in this rig that I built, and the drives power down to save power if they're not in use. But then when the drive needs to be accessed, the system will freeze and wait for them to all spin up before it completes the request. And I think that was what was screwing with the sync last time. So I set the timeout to them for 5 hours, and we've only been streaming for less than that. So, all right, catching up. Let's see. Pirate Gamer Boy, I saw the Gaming Historian Mega Man DOS PC video with an interview with the dev. Yes, and the dev defended it by saying all PC games were that quality back then. Okay, all right. So the dev was incorrect. There was a wide variety of quality in games that came out in the late 80s. I will say this, until the original Commander Keen, nobody took EGA and VGA hardware scrolling seriously. I can't recall any game that actually used it well until the first Commander Keen, where they would use the horizontal panning register to do fine pans. Most games up until that point, Mega Man, most notably Captain Comic, if you remember that, and the original Duke Nukem, the 2D side-scrolling ones, they all scrolled in like 8-pixel chunks because all they did was change the start address register, or they would only move things in entire byte width boundaries. So okay, it's fair to say that a lot of games were like that back then, but anyone could have programmed a smooth scrolling game. It's just that nobody did until, you know, Carmack and Romero in what was it, 1990, or 91. Let us see. Computer game videos. Stream is in sync. I am late. That is okay, computer game videos. If you have a question, please do ask it. I think I'm only going to be streaming for about another 20 to 25 minutes. But I'm happy to answer any questions. It's, of course, not really. I've went through all this trouble to get a system out here, and yet we're not going to be coding necessarily or gaming necessarily, because I wasn't expecting such a wonderful turnout. I'm really happy that people care about this channel and what I do. I'm very, very appreciative. So maybe we'll get to maybe we'll play a game I don't know how much you guys want to see a text adventure. Well, it's not really a text adventure. It's the progenitor to NetHack. It's one of the original RPGs. But we'll see if we get there. Let's run through the comments. Let us see. Pirate Gamer Boy, I found an XT on eBay that had a 386 motherboard in it. I'm not the biggest fan of sleeper PCs. I am not a big fan of sleeper PCs either. I think it's because I'm trying to save the old computers. So when someone takes it and guts it, I kind of die a little. I'm being dramatic. I don't really die a little, but it's just like, I mean, all right, I get it. Like show me a motherboard that is gone, like almost completely irreparable due to due to battery fluid leakage. Sure, go for it. Do what you want to do. But when people say, I took this working classic Mac and turned it into a fishbowl, I just want to throttle those people. Because sometimes those mods, most of the time, those mods are not reversible. George Strobel, our grade school had an Apple IIe lab environment in 1988. We played Word Munchers, Number Munchers, Oregon Trail, all the MEEC games. Do I have any grade school memories? Great question. I'm a little older than you. I remember playing educational games, mostly typing and letter games on an Apple II in 1979. In grade school, in 6th grade, I started typing my papers on Apple Writer, and I learned how to program in Logo. We had a fairly progressive school in 1982, 1983 that was on the forefront of teaching. It was a great school district, so props to my father for ensuring that we could live there, and props to the curriculum administrators. And then in 7th grade, I learned BASIC there on the Apple II, and then there were a couple of us that were extremely advanced. Like, we would complete the assignments in 10% of the time, and then we'd like go back to writing our own program. And they actually created an advanced computer curriculum course for just the 5 or 6 of us. And I mentioned my friend Court earlier in the stream. My oldest friend Court, I've known since we were 2.5 years old. He was also a part of that class. Maybe someday I'll have a chat with him and we can go over some of these memories. But a chat, like an online chat or something with him. You know, we chat all the time. It's just not online. Those were also some fun memories, although half the time we spent writing our programs in BASIC. We were self-teaching ourselves in BASIC, and the other half of the time we were copying games, because of course we were. So George Strobel, who did Apple IIs in grade school and played Oregon Trail, let me ask you, did you play the original Oregon Trail on Apple II, which was the one I played? And by original, what I mean is, the graphics were much simpler, and shooting deer for food was drastically different. In later versions of the Oregon Trail, you can move around and aim. In the original Oregon Trail, you had you could only fire upwards and you could not move. So you'd have to wait for the deer to go by and then you'd shoot it. It was like playing Space Invaders. That was the version I played. Most people do not show that version of Oregon Trail when they show Oregon Trail. They show the later version that had all the cool graphics. Pi Caruso says, I have a Sound Blaster Pro 2.0 and a Sound Blaster 2.0. I need to test things to take a look for before plugging it into a PC. I know about electrolytic caps. Those look fine. That's really it. All the problems with those, all the stuff that produces low volume output or hissy output is always related to the caps. So some people go crazy and replace every cap on the board. You don't have to do that, but it can be a lot of work to try to figure out which ones you should do. I mean, look for any obvious bulging or leaking caps. Sometimes they can leak without bulging, by the way. Look down at the bottom of the caps. Look at the legs. You might, if you see a little bit of corrosion at the legs, sometimes the juice oozes out through the bottom. And so looking at the top, you can't tell. So try that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And then, just plug the sucker in. Rarely, I have seen this twice online in the last decade. The DSP itself will fail. So at that point, you're done. There's nothing you can do because the DSP is what, that's what produces the digitized sound. Like the ad-lib part will still work, but the digital sound won't work. Let's see. All right. Catching up. K-Panic says, what about reverse sleepers? I guess. Like, what? Like a modern pen, not a modern, I don't know. Like a modern, it looks like a modern case, and then it's actually running a new XT. I mean, actually, if you look at Clint's videos, LJR's videos, I think he did that. Didn't he do that? Oh, maybe I'm confusing him with Phil's Computer Lab. Well, some people will get a new XT, NU-XT, and that's this engineered from the ground up, like XT board that uses an NEC V20, but it has common I/O, so you don't need to go finding an old keyboard or monitor. It's got like either VGA or HDMI. I think it's VGA. It's got VGA on it, and I think it's got either PS2 or USB for the keyboard. And so I think I remember seeing a video where someone put a new XT in a totally modern case, and so it looks like it's some awesome thing, and then it's like a 10 megahertz XT. Pi Caruso 97, I am building an XT piece by piece because full systems cost too much, and I already have some parts. I'll be putting an ATX PSU in it, VGA card, and an XT-ID. Great. However you can do it. I will be the last person to shame you if you can't, get a full stock system, whatever. Do it however you can do it, man. An ATX PSU makes a lot of sense because you can get a quick replacement. You can troubleshoot them easier. The little ATX PSU testers, they'll go right into it, so go for it. All right, George Strobel. We did play the original Space Invaders version. And with that, I'm actually caught up. So I'll tell you what. I'll still try to monitor the comments, but for the last 13 odd minutes, I will talk a little bit about Hack. Part nostalgia, part trivia. Hack is the first PC game I remember copying. And some of these dates here say 86, but I got it in, I want to say 84, maybe 85. And it was okay to copy it because it was free and it was meant to. So Hack is the predecessor to NetHack. And NetHack, for those of you who don't know, is this ludicrously gigantic, complicated, intricate, involved, text-based RPG roguelike. And it had an earlier version, Hack. Let's see if some of the doc files are still on here. I've copied these files from system to system to system. Now, this version is 3.6, which was 1986. But there's this gentleman here at the top, Don Neller, took all the C code for the Unix version of Hack, and he ported it to DOS. And I don't remember which compiler he used. Actually, we can cheat and take a look at what compiler he used. Let's go to the end of the exe and take a quick look. Although I used list, so it's going to take a while. But and it uses ANSI escape sequences for. He made it MS-DOS compatible, so that was actually kind of cool. I mean, it was okay. Error. This is C file info. This is Microsoft C, I think. Yeah, because normally Borland C compilers have more junk at the end of them, and Lattice C has some more junk in it too. So I think this was Microsoft C. Anyway, So he ported it, and I believe it's MS-DOS compatible. It gets all its input from DOS, and it uses ANSI escape sequences to draw everything, which is why my screen has snow on it, because I loaded an extremely fast ANSI driver that doesn't check for snow. And it's great. My brother and I spent years playing this game. I wrote a blog post, which you can read if you go to trickster.oldschool.org, spelled like this, which is my blog. If you go there, I wrote something where I finally finished this game 26 years after I started playing it. I mentioned before, this specific version is 3.6 from 1986. The original version, I think I played from 84, was hack version like 1 something. And the major difference with the 1 is that it had it had like a cheat mode. They called it wizard mode. And you could start it up with, I think, -W, and you would be a wizard, and you'd automatically have a wand of wishing. And the wand of wishing will give you, it'll flat out give you up to 3 of anything you want 3 total times. So it's like really easy to win the game that way. Also, in the original version of hack, the point of hack is to descend down through the levels and find the amulet of Yendor and bring it back up to the surface. And it is a roguelike. It looks almost exactly like Rogue. I'm going to go ahead and start it real quick. Donald Rivers, wait, you're Trickster? Yes. Yes, I am. Is that bad? I hope I didn't wrong you at some point. But yes, I am. I am the demo scener Trickster. My real name is Jim Leonard, and I also co-founded Moby Games. So if you like Moby Games, you're welcome. And I've pirated a shit ton of software, and I swore. And have been one of the longest running archival collectives of DOS games, and so on and so on. But yes, that's me. The suspense me and you're running. Okay, all right. Pirate Gamer Boy. The suspense. Well, guess what? I'm going to name him after you. Pirate Gamer. So we actually start it. It asks for a save disk. We're not going to do that. Shall I pick a character for you? If you say yes, you get a random one. I'm going to say no. And so it asks you, so this is your character class, essentially. This game is not strict Dungeons and Dragons. It was inspired by D&D, and by which in turn was inspired by The Hobbit. So you have a couple of things that make sense. You're always human, but you have this character class. So a tourist has a camera that can blind monsters, so you can run away. A speleologist has a pickaxe that you can use to dig through walls. A fighter starts out with a 2-handed sword. A knight starts out with a sword, shield, and armor, but doesn't have a lot of strength. So it's not as cool as you think. A caveman has 18 strength and a club. And a wizard has almost no strength, but starts out with an elven cloak, which can... it's been a while since I played. An elven cloak is resistant to certain forms of magic or magic attacks. I'm just going to say a fighter. And then just like any roguelike, we start in what looks like Rogue, but it isn't. It's actually more involved. And again, this is the precursor to NetHack. So if you're familiar with NetHack, some of this stuff will seem familiar. If you're familiar with Rogue, some of this will seem familiar. However, it's neither. It's in between the two. So we're starting. Welcome to Hack. Now it's already, we have a message. You are lucky. Full moon tonight. I always thought that was cool. Full moon tonight is like a luck bonus. And if it says careful new moon tonight, it's like a luck minus. Everything is text in here, so everything is represented by characters. The little D is my dog companion. $sign is gold. Question mark is a scroll. If you type specify. If you type question mark, it'll tell you for help. You have tons of help built into the game. So short help is all the keys and all the commands. Oh, and here's a fun fact. I learned VI from this game. because the default movement keys before he added support for arrow keys are the VI movement keys. H will go to the left, K will go up, and so on. So when I first sat down at VI for the first time in Unix, everyone was telling me how hard VI was to learn, and I was like, I was like the girl in Jurassic Park. I'm like, this is hack. I know this. So, and to date, VI is still my favorite editor. So, the game is turn-based, and I think I have, the lower right corner is the turn number. So if you see that lower right corner number going up, that's what it is. So nothing happens in the game until you move, because it's turn-based. Usually you pick up things when you run into them. I have my defaults turn off that. Right now I ran into this scroll, but I did not pick it up. It just says you see here a scroll. The reason you do this is because in hack, you can die from touching things. So you don't want grabbing things to be the default. But I do want this scroll, so I'm going to pick it up. So I've done so. And then I'm going to move over. So my dog, if you run into a monster, it's the same thing as attacking it. I don't want to attack my dog, so I'm just going to wait. Okay, so I waited one turn. Dog is gone. I move over, and that is 9 sling bullets. Well, I'll go ahead and pick them up. So what do I have? I is an inventory. I have a two-handed sword, which I'm wielding, and I have ring mail, which I am wearing. I also have a scroll labeled, and it's jumbled numbers. So all of the magical items you pick up in the game initially have jumbled names, and it's rings, wands, and potions and scrolls. You don't know what they do. So part of the fun of playing hack is figuring out what this stuff is. Now, right now, my scroll is labeled Peruzzini. It's gibberish. That's not going to be the same. It's random every time. So if I start a new game, I'm going to get a completely new random for whatever this scroll is. Now, for giggles, I'll go ahead and read it. So let's read this scroll. It disappears. This is an identify scroll. Wow, that's lucky. Identify scrolls let you identify what those random letters and numbers mean. This is the best possible result. What an RNG. This is so great. Unfortunately, I don't have anything to identify. But it says, what do you want to identify? And I can try to look at my whole inventory, but I don't think I've got anything to actually identify. I'm just going to hit enter. And it'll be like, do you want to identify that? No. It's +0. Identify that? No. 9 sling bullets? No. Okay, that's all you've got, dude. So I have to use this. All right, fine. I'll use it on the sling bullets. They're +0 sling bullets. Great. But now I've identified that as an identify scroll, and if I pick up another identify scroll, it will say so. So part of what makes this game cool is exploration, and not all potions, wands, or scrolls have easily identifiable effects. So sometimes you'll use a wand and it's like nothing happens. But if you use the wand again in a room with an undead creature and suddenly the undead starts running away from you, you can now realize, oh, this is a wand of undead turning. So that's fun. Capital E is a floating eye. If I attack it, it will freeze me with its gaze. I don't want to do that. My dog, however, will happily attack the eye for me. Let's wait a little bit and see if he kills it for me. Come on, you can do it. The floating eye is killed. And the dog ate a dead floating eye. Sometimes eating corpses. This game it's amazing for a text adventure, a text RPG, how intricate this game is. Eating a corpse can give you short-term or long-term effects. If you eat a dead floating eye, it hurts you in the short term. I think you lose hit points or you feel sick, but you then gain the ability to see if you are blinded. So that's kind of cool. Now, I see 2 rooms on the screen, and they are connected by 2 doorways and a corridor, and I've got nowhere to go. So is the game over? No. there are hidden doorways, and you can search for them. In this case, it's the S key. Now, I can hit S a couple of times, but what I'm going to do instead is use, and remember I said before, this game taught me VI before I knew what VI was. In VI, you can do a number and a command, and it will repeat that command that number of times. So I am going to hit 20 is the maximum number of times you can search. So I'm going to hit 20, count, and then, is it S? Yes, S. And it just searched 20 times, and in those 20 times, it found a hidden doorway. So let's keep going. The map reveals itself. Okay, now this is diagonal. Sometimes, if you're not carrying a lot, you can squeeze through a diagonal space. If you are carrying a lot, it won't let you. So imagine picking up this game. It's free. It's super detailed and intricate. And it just uses text characters. This experience is the allure of vintage computing, in my opinion. I don't know if maybe for new people, but it certainly was back then. It was like, you mean this super simple thing can be super deep? Yes, it is. Now, a capital B. Oh, and if you don't know what something is, Hack will also let you identify it. So right now I see capital B. Well, what is that? I can say, please tell me what that is. Capital B. It'll go, oh, it's a giant bat. Okay, great. Now, giant bats are a pain in the ass because they're faster than you. They can attack and move away in the same turn, which this bat just did. The bat misses. I'm going to try to kill it. All right. So attacking monsters, you run into them wielding a weapon. Right now I'm wielding a two-handed sword. I'm going to run into it with the diagonal key, and I destroyed it because I'm awesome. Smoky potion. I'll go ahead and grab that. So the point of this game is to explore all the rooms, find the downwards staircase, keep going down, down, down into the dungeons until you find eventually the amulet of Yendor. Get it, grab it, and then exit alive somehow. And it is not easy. So I'm moving one step at a time here, and this can get a little tiring, so I'm actually going to use a shortcut key. If you move while holding down the shift key, it will continue to move in that direction until it finds something interesting. So instead of moving once to the left, I'm going to do shift left. All right, it stopped because I found an enormous rock. All right, I'm moving around the rock. Ooh, more loot. What's this? A wand. It says a zinc wand. Again, until I identify it, either by shooting it and observing its effects, or by using an identify scroll, I don't actually know what it does. Okay, gold pieces. Right now, I'm not going to play the whole game, but I am trying to find... Ooh, a whistle. I will grab the whistle. Whistles... Whistles can be used to train your dog, if I remember correctly. There are shops with shopkeepers in this game, and you can't steal from them normally, because if you are carrying something unpaid and you try to leave the shop, the shopkeeper will block your path. But you can train your dog to run into the shop, grab something, and bring it out to you. And I believe the whistle is part of that. There is also something called a magic whistle, and I can't remember if only wizards can use it, but it does something else. Unfortunately, I don't remember quite what. You hear some noises. The little dog ate a dead gnome. What that really means is, before you got there, the dog was attacking a gnome, and when you got there, he ate it. Eating is a part of this game. You have hunger. If you don't eat when you are hungry, you will get faint and weak and lose strength, and eventually you will die. That is a lure R, which is a rat. Rats are the easiest thing to kill in this game, so it is easy for me to kill it. It dropped leather armor. I don't know how a rat was carrying leather armor, but it did, so I'm going to grab it. And then finally we have greater than symbol, which if I identify it with slash, tells me it is the staircase to the next level. And my dog will follow me if he is next to me. You know what? Maybe this is a good use of the whistle. Let us apply. No. Uh-oh. What did I do? I thought apply is how I use the whistle. Yes, I wish to use G, the whistle. It produces a high whistling sound. Now I'm hoping that means the dog is going to come find me. And I'm waiting, but he's not coming. I'm going to start doing 11 waits. Here he is. Okay, come on, dude. Get next to me. Come on. Come on. Okay, he's next to me. Now if I go down the staircase, he should be with me on the next level. He is. And I'll leave you with this. I'm going to go ahead and save the game. Maybe this is something we can do over several streams. I'll save the game, but what's also interesting about Hack is that if you die on a level, it will leave a bones file, and you can find yourself meeting your own ghost playing through the game. Once in 10 or 20 games or something, it will decide to load a bones file instead of the next level. And that can be trippy to find your own ghost. The advantage of finding your own ghost is that all the loot you had is there and dropped, and you can grab it. The disadvantage is that the ghost is really hard to kill. He's also incredibly slow to move, and he's slow to attack, but he's hard to kill. And I think when he does attack, it's really hard. It's bad. So generally, I don't fight ghosts unless I'm a very high level. So it's 11:05. I'm going to very quickly run through the remaining questions in the chat, if there are any. And then there we are. Donald Rivers, you published Mind Candy, right? I have that and showed my kids. I did publish it, and thank you for getting it, and thank you for showing it to your kids. We tried hard to keep it family friendly, so I hope you believe me, in the demo scene, that's in the 90s demo scene, that's really tough. So cool. Well, thanks for getting it, and I hope it brought you some enjoyment. It was difficult to make all 3 Mind Candy volumes, but it was really rewarding, and some of the best parts for me were getting the commentary from the original authors and hearing them do it. For the first Mind Candy, all of us sat in this very room over on a couch behind me, and we everyone involved with the project did the running commentary. And for 2 and 3, we farmed out commentary to various people who sent it in, or we did the commentary ourselves. So thanks for getting it. And Mind Candy 1 and 2 are free. You can torrent them now. Burn them to the DVD of your choice, and I suggest doing that because the menus have fun little things in them, including a smart jukebox mode and little hidden Easter eggs and all sorts of fun stuff. Alan Hightower, Emacs for life. Nothing wrong with Emacs. Although sometimes I have a problem with the people who are like crazy Emacs people. Like, if Emacs is your shell, we're going to have words. I'm sorry, we're just going to have words. S3V, got to run, but wanted to drop by and say hello. Thank you for dropping by, sir. Pi Caruso, what's the biggest tile-based map? Oh, and by the way, let me type something. I'm going to type something in the comments right now. Whoops, wrong keyboard. EOS, I'm calling that the end of the stream. So comments after that, unfortunately, I will not address. But feel free to leave. If anyone has additional questions, leave them as comments in this video when it goes live, and I will see them when I review the comments every week. Pi Caruso, what's the biggest tile-based map you have ever seen on an XT game? Ideally something that fits into 64K so you don't have to get mad coding for an 8088. One of the biggest I have seen is Planet X3, which uses 32K to produce a 128 by 256 grid. That is the biggest tile map in a game I have seen where it's all in memory at once. There are larger tile-based mapped games, such as the Ultima games. The Ultima games are, the overworld is groups of tiles, and then the map is those groups. So it's kind of like manual vector quantization for the map or something like that. It's like each tile is actually a group of tiles. So that's one way to do it. I think the Ultima 4 source code documents are out there somewhere. Someone either wrote them up, like typed them up, or they're scanned or something. If you search for Ultima source code, you can probably find them. and the complete description of how they did that tiling system is there, so that's pretty cool. Oh gosh, Alan Hightower, I was inspired to Emacs by Richard Stallman eating his toe cheese on camera during a Free Software Foundation con. Can't tell if you're kidding or not, but in either case, that's nuts. John Donnelly asked, when I was playing Hack and the dog ate a floating eye, will he gain color vision? Unfortunately, we don't know. Only the source code can tell us. Pi Caruso, I code MS-DOS stuff myself because it's an OS I can fully know how it works, and many details about the hardware, something you can't do with modern PCs. That's why vintage PCs fascinate me. That is a fantastic observation, and I agree completely. One of the appeals of vintage computing as a hobby is that the systems are self-contained enough and, let's be fair, simple enough that it is possible for one person to really understand all of it. And it took me decades to do that with the PC, but I do feel like I pretty much know that system. And a few upwards, like 286, 386, that kind of thing. A modern system, I had a lot of fun building my recent rig. I've been building systems since 1994. I went from a 386-16 that was purchased from a clone company to a 386-40, which I built myself from parts in 1993, actually. And so I've been building them ever since. But these days, yeah, it's I don't think any one person can really program a modern system completely, like at the lowest level. So that is an appeal of vintage systems, absolutely. Another nice thing about non-PC vintage systems is that, if you're talking the Commodore 64 or ZX Spectrum or something like that, these older 8-bit personal computers, they are fixed moments in time. There was only one of them. There's only one Commodore. Okay, it's not totally true. There were different revisions of the Commodore 64, and some have the older SID and some of the newer SID. But for the most part, they're all a 1 megahertz 6502, a 64K of RAM, and a specific kernel, which is their what they call their BIOS, and a VIC, and a VIC chip, VIC2 chip with certain sprites and whatever. They're fixed points in time, so you can hone in on them, and that's very appealing. It's cool to dive into a fixed target. Pi Caruso, wait, is this the game that inspired Dwarf Fortress? I don't think so. I don't actually know what inspired Dwarf Fortress, but if anything did inspire Dwarf Fortress, it was probably Hack's successor, NetHack. And NetHack is still being developed today. Their new versions come out, even 30 years after it was first started. So that was probably the game that did it. Let us see. Pi Caruso is mentioning to Donald, you can actually build a functioning 68000 system running no memory unit, MMU-less Linux. Really? There's a Linux that doesn't rely on a memory unit? I might want to know what that's like. Donald Rivers, I don't think I noticed the commentary track. That was half the appeal, man. Anyway, pop it in and do the commentary track and seek to like a couple of your favorite demos. And you'll either get commentary from the original authors or from me or from someone else on the team. So there you go. All right, guys, thank you so much for all of your comments and everything. It was wonderful seeing you. It was wonderful, Alan, always wonderful to see you, even if virtually. And everyone else, thanks for the wonderful comments and questions. It was so nice to not have to do something that was, don't tell the other subscribers, but it was really nice to cover stuff that wasn't about, video capture, which is unfortunately more than half my subscriber base, I think, because of the tutorial videos I do on that. But this was fun. I'm glad I had something to to show. Maybe I can plan a little bit better next time and not have it be so impromptu and not have to screw around with the chat window. I don't know how professional streamers do it. This stuff can be complicated sometimes. And oh no, Joe Tyson, you're just joining, but I'm just leaving. I'm so sorry. But again, thanks guys. Hope you have a great month. Hopefully I'll do this a little sooner than a month. And if you still have additional questions, leave them as comments in this video when it goes live. And that is it. Oh gosh, K-Panic at 6:15 where you are. I'm so sorry. Well, thanks for sticking around. I'll let you go. And I wish I had something pithy to say, but I'll just repeat what I said earlier in the stream, which is be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. So thanks again, guys. See you.